nothing come this year, July. I'm gonna roll myself up in a big ball and die. My.
Ah, damn. Okay. Hi, Anila Carmen. How you doing? Let's just start. I have to wait. Anything? This bar, just type something here. Breaking. Put out photo for. This here. Okay. Space. Yeah, okay. I should put the chat down here actually. Or maybe just hide the whole things, maybe. But I want the second window on the top though. And switch now it's like this. Yeah. So maybe the chat can be on the bottoms, and then I can put some stuff up here. Maybe. Anyway, let's just start rigging. Music alphabet. Let's listen to some Dr. Cage stuff. So it's almost 1 p.m. We have a few hours to work today. I would try to finish this within 2 to 3 days. So that's mean maybe on 2nd April. I'll try to finish this before that. I'll try to.
That is afraid that something is like fundamentally. So like now something weird has happened.
Is the sound good?
Are there like the part of you that is afraid that something is fundamentally off? The more successful you become,
I
the
did some
more
stuff
you're
off stream,
afraid that
like the
someone's gonna
glow
look at you and be
physics
like, "Where's the
and
patch?"
some
Hello,
stuff.
my friend.
Which
Hello,
I should have
Dr. K.
streamed, but like yesterday, my roommate was at home, so I just didn't stream at all.
Chance, and thank you for everything you do.
Yeah,
it's,
I see.
Amazing.
There's a
and
lot of
it's
shit.
helping me and a ton of other people.
Well,
Have a
you're
good
very
shit that
welcome,
I
and
should have
thank you very much
streamed.
for being here, because what I do
Like these
requires
things and,
people like
the
you
physics and
to come on. So thank you so much, man.
It's a privilege. So
Likewise. And what do you go by, my friend?
you can call me Trend, if that's okay.
Trend?
It's my username.
Yeah, absolutely, Trend. So tell me, what's holding you back?
So in short, the way I summed it up was
I
a
was shut
fear
up
of
for a bit.
success.
Once I finish all of the animation for these
every
things,
time
I need to put this thing in place though.
or within reach of something I really want, I seem to
place.
self-sabotage in some way or another.
Okay.
In a way, maybe a more practical example that I gave earlier was, for example, if let's say in a dating context, you start dating somebody and then they seem to be okay, then maybe I see it going somewhere, and out of nowhere, maybe I start seeing things in them that maybe I make it up, just like defects or things, red flags that aren't there or might not be there, just because I'm kind of worried of what an actual relationship might be in that sense, or in a work context, it might
Maybe
be
you should stop
taking
thinking
on a
out loud
project
that much.
with confidence at the beginning, and then once I kind of move forward, I start to realize that maybe I have bit a little bit more than I could chew. But you know, I've done things successfully in the past, so it's just kind of a self-perpetuating belief maybe down the line.
Okay, so that sounds
not on this one, because I have to turn this off eventually.
Insight into recognizing a potential pattern that you
because I need to disable to like visible on the second outfit as well.
Of success, how do you come to that conclusion?
Let me turn this off a bit.
Well, obviously I've used a lot of your content.
Ooh, it's not connected.
over the past couple of
rotate it a
years
bit then.
to kind of ask myself relevant questions, and that has helped me a ton in understanding a little bit why I might do certain things. In my estimation, it would be something like the fear maybe of responsibility that comes along with success, the fear of the hard work that goes into it. Even though I'm not afraid of hard work per se, I'm quite a diligent worker. I wasn't very good in school. I got by, but once I moved out on my own, I kind of became more responsible as a necessity.
I still have the second outfit.
I do enjoy responsibility when it comes to. And I don't mind taking on other people's problems that much. It's just that when it comes to myself, I see
and hand post to do. This is the hardest thing.
It'd be easier to stay in my comfort zone.
And I kind of done.
I'm not very happy in some
and it's kind of done.
Aspects. Let's
say. The tongue have to fix it a bit as well, but maybe after.
Comfort zone is.
Yeah.
Okay. I can be more specific to my situation in particular, which in this case
it's almost
would be
done.
Dating in particular.
3 or 4 more days, maybe. Maybe 2 or 3 if I focus.
So for me, I'm 28, so I'm not young. Let's say by any. I'm not one of the younger members of the audience, but. I don't catastrophize as to like my life is over or this or that. It's just more like I've put off dating for a while. I moved out from my parents' house. I focused on getting a place of my own, a job. I jumped between a few jobs until I found a career I liked. So I put a lot of effort into my career.
It is even on the leg.
I work out. I try to.
I might have put this in the wrong place. Actually,
I try to stay into the whole like.
It's kind of in the leg loop. It's kind of maybe rotate it a bit. Dating, right now, it's just in a
find it
weird
very
basis.
difficult to make maybe take the first step because I have this perfectionism problem where if I do, let's say, meet somebody I like, I don't know where that would lead. I'm worried about the potential kind of.
Okay, it's freeze.
Ramifications of
it's freeze again. It's fucking shit.
I've had relationships in the past.
I didn't.
But that was a while back. And so it's been a gap where now I'm worried that the success in that in a potential relationship, I don't know what that would entail. For example,
we should have put this in.
A little bit more vague now, but.
I think it's
isn't the rotation here, so it could be warped a bit, which
thank you so much for sharing everything you shared. I think it's really helpful, and I think part of the reason that we're vague sometimes is that
rotation is more for the leg,
articulate very well up to the barrier of our understanding.
Yeah, it should have done
that. And so,
that.
like, it's naturally going to be like anytime we discuss, we're trying to figure something out. It's not precise. Like if we had understood everything, then we would have moved past it. So I think it's totally fine. So let me ask you a couple of questions.
She would have that here, and this one.
So actually, let me just try to. Let's start with a quick
summary. This would warp a lot.
What I'm hearing is that you're like generally, it sounds like you're doing pretty well. This might warp the
fire as well.
A lot of effort.
It's not ideal.
You've had a couple bumps in the road. You've overcome those. You're sort of taking care of yourself physically. You're advancing professionally.
But now
you're really like working on yourself and have seen a lot of progress. I'm also hearing that you can you don't avoid responsibility. You don't even necessarily avoid challenges or things like that.
Sure
you're really able to
not
kind of
too
rise
bad.
To the challenge and progress and grow. Is that fair?
Correct. Good enough.
When it comes to dating, though, you're noticing that like as things kind of move forward, and here's where I'm a little bit confused because earlier you kind of said like once things get started, you'll start noticing red flags that maybe aren't there, excuses to get out of a relationship. But then just recently you said that you have trouble sort of starting things. Can you help me understand where does the problem arise? At the starting or like once things are kind of
as well.
rolling?
Yeah, so that's, you made a great point. So the way I would put it is I've had a couple of first dates here and there. I've had a couple of like interactions, whether my friend set me up or I met somebody off a dating app or something like that. Sometimes I felt pressured into, catching up on that end because I feel like I'm behind my peers when it comes to the relationship aspect. So in the sense, I'll like jump into the situation and then pull back when I realize that, hey, maybe, I'm not sure that, this is where I want to go with this person, but I took it because it was better than nothing. So I really have a fear of like doing things because it's better than nothing, or I don't subscribe to the whole like being with somebody because I don't want to be alone. I'm very good at being alone. I'm not bored. I don't feel like I necessarily need other people, but it's definitely something that I would like to work on, because my goals are definitely to have a relationship, to have maybe a family someday.
Oh, I have
So,
a new
where
commission
that
form
ends
come
up
in.
going is that
Let me check.
with somebody I really care, I would potentially really
Okay.
care about, my insecurities start coming up.
Okay.
Whereas with people that I don't care about that much, as bad as that may sound, it's a lot easier to kind of give it a try and then pull back when like I see something wrong, or I assume there's something wrong.
Okay, can I?
Maybe I should
Trent?
reply to them off stream. I
please.
think. Maybe. Yeah, I think I will contact them off stream later. I should take notes somewhere so I can kind of remember.
Can you tell me what you mean about? You said that your insecurities come up more when you're
take
when
notes
there's someone
somewhere.
you're more invested in.
Shit.
Can you help me understand what kind of insecurities you're talking about?
Maybe you should do it now so I don't forget. Yeah,
specifically probably, and I've watched a
I'll do
couple
this,
of your incel videos as well.
on another browser.
And I think having to explain to somebody that I haven't been in a relationship in a while, that's something that I've worried might pop up when I get more invested with somebody that I might like, actually. That's one of them. Another one might be just fear of being judged for, even though like on my metric, and what doesn't help somehow reversely is my friends telling me that like, oh, you're so great, or my family telling, oh, you're so great, somebody would be lucky to have you, and I'm like, oh yeah, great, thanks for that, so why don't I have anybody? Like it's very much a self-inflicted thing maybe, but it's definitely that feeling of either being not good enough on some level that I can't understand, or it's the having to explain to somebody that, hey, like I've been working on myself, but maybe that's just an excuse for why I've been alone. Maybe I've been alone for other reasons that I can't understand and that somebody else might see.
Trend, do you feel ready for a relationship?
Definitely. Yeah, I think so. Okay. Because in the past, I've definitely felt not ready. So like, I felt the difference between not being ready and then being ready.
Okay.
Whatever that may mean.
So,
like it's quite.
Let me ask you something, Trent. If you met the one tomorrow, how would you feel?
Ecstatic.
I disagree.
Nervous. Terrified, probably.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Help me understand. What are you terrified of?
Of ruining it.
Very good.
Transition like that.
Right. So, if you're afraid of ruining it, so here's the thing. Here's what I'm hearing for you. You let me know. I mean, very good as in, I'm assuming I'm right here. But so you're the judge, right? So I'm going to put for something forward to you. Here's the thing. So Trent has been putting his life together. Trent has a good career. He's working out. The thing that I'm really hearing from you, what you're really concerned about, is that you're not. What I'm really sensing from you is that if you were to meet the one tomorrow, you're not confident that you could make it work. You're concerned that if you met the one, she would ask questions like, what, like, tell me a little bit about your dating history. And you're like, yeah, I've never really been in a long-term relationship. It's been many, many years. And then she's going to like look at you. And I'm assuming you're heterosexual for a moment. Is that a fair assumption?
That is a fair assumption.
So she's going to look at you and she's going to be like, oh my God, like this guy looks so great. Like he may exercise and he may have a decent career and he's got a silky smooth voice, but there must be something wrong with him because he hasn't, had a decent relationship. Do you ever does that kind of resonate with you?
Absolutely. And I think maybe that's the way I see myself in a certain way.
So tell me about that. How do you see yourself?
Exactly as you said, where, all of the above, but there must be something wrong with him because he didn't have a long-term relationship.
Link, there's there's no link I can find myself.
I've been working on myself. I've been doing this, I've been doing that, but that's just me and the way I think.
It.
I don't know how other people think. I completely agree with what you said earlier also of, the fear of not getting it to work, because practically speaking, I don't have the experience to know like the ups and downs of relationships and how to manage them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
can I
Wait, when was
can I
this?
say,
go ahead,
sorry.
Okay.
You're just saying so much good stuff. I don't want to lose any of it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Keep going. Sorry. If you can. If you can't, that's okay. I know I interrupted your frame of mind, but your flow.
No.
So let me ask you a couple other questions. So you said rationalize it to yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So like if you're rationalizing, oh, I've been working on myself, is that really the reason you've been single?
Well, on the spot, I can't think of, like, I'm sure I felt like I couldn't add much to somebody else's life before, whatever that may mean. I had because also my initial relationships were very much based on kind of a negative attraction to people that maybe we were both having issues. So I was in a much, no, I don't want to dramatize too much, but I was like in a darker place. I was relating to people more on a kind of a sad level, like trauma bonding, stuff like
Sure.
that.
Unhealthy foundations of connection.
Unhealthy foundations. So that didn't end up going very well because my standards were very low, and probably theirs were as well. It was, I would take anybody that would like me. I was blown away the first time somebody actually liked me. So, so that I put that to the side for a while. After that, I ended up getting involved with a couple of people that were, they were nice people and all of that, but they just weren't for me for whatever reason. And now that I see myself as having put in the work, I'd like somebody who was also put in some amount of work, not necessarily like, they don't have to have this amazing career or this or that, but, somebody who's self-aware and somebody who's emotionally healthy-ish enough,
Okay. Beautifully said. So Tren, let's try to tease things apart a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to put forward just a couple of observations, and let's see how we can understand a couple things. So question number one. Observation number one. Oddly enough, the more invested you are in someone, the more likely you are to self-sabotage. Correct or incorrect?
Correct.
Okay. The less invested you are in someone, the more likely you are to advance the relationship. Correct or incorrect?
Correct.
How do you understand that?
You replied.
I don't fear the consequences of losing it that much.
Good. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me, right? So and what kind of consequence are we talking about?
Regret.
Let's check Trello again. Let's see if
What would
it's
you regret?
Having missed out, like having ruined something potentially good,
right?
Or the as you going back to the one example, kind of.
You believe in the one?
Okay, next month I have a few
I believe there's
commission.
ones. There's
a few of them.
multiple people that we can have.
Okay.
There's compatibility. And
There's a few more in the Twitch
I used to
Twitter's
believe
reply as well.
What happened?
Which I should add here actually.
The reality
So
happened.
I should add. But I still haven't confirmed yet, so.
No, that's fine. So let me
so
put it this way. So let's understand
fine.
this first thing.
Okay.
You play video games, Trend?
Yes, I do.
What do you play?
I mainly play Dota 2. Now I play Valorant these days.
Beautiful. Okay. So this is going to be easy to understand. In Dota 2, you can queue up for ranked and you can queue up for unranked, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what you're doing in your relationships is you're never queuing ranked.
Never.
You're always queuing unranked.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, very much.
Explain it to us.
Well, in unranked, even if you lose, there's no real consequence. In ranked, which I also don't do in Dota these days, so it does apply as a parallel.
Right?
But yeah.
It's interesting. So if we're talking about self-sabotage, and you want a relationship, let's just understand that this makes perfect sense. And yet it's kind of bizarre that you pull away from relationships that have the highest value of success or probability of success. The relationships that you actually want are the ones that you're least likely to engage in.
Correct.
Right? So that's like kind of weird. And the more that we tunnel down into that, the more that we realize that I think on some level, you're afraid of screwing up the right relationship. And so you're happy because like, and this, we'll get to this in a second. So you kind of feel somewhere inside you that there's like something fundamentally that isn't great, right?
Yes.
And so like, if there isn't something that's fundamentally great, like you've got to level up in unranked and like learn how to play the game.
Okay,
You're 28 years old. You haven't had a whole lot of healthy relationships. You're falling a little bit behind. You're not like doom and gloom kind of stuff where it's like too late for you, but it's sort of like, I kind of see both of the pieces, right? Where there's the part of you that's like a little bit doom and gloom, and now you've started to work on that, but it's still sort of there.
It's not the outfit.
So now we're going to get to the really tricky thing.
Anymore.
As you become more successful, do you think that exacerbates this problem or improves this problem? I know it's kind of a weird question.
No, it's a perfect question, because what I was thinking of also was I've had milestones that I thought if I hit, it would kind of unblock me. So I thought that when I moved out of my parents' place and got my own place, well, my parents are divorced, so when I moved out of like one of my parents' place and got my own place, that would help because I would be able to kind of show that I have my own place. When I got a good job, I thought that would help me. When I got in shape, I thought that would help me.
To some,
so I just kept hitting milestones, expecting
basic foot as well. I think I finished the second outfit today.
It just seems to.
It's not that complex compared to the first one.
As I move forward,
after that, I had to do the extra hand pose and the dog. That might be a bit hard.
Tolerance for the unranked is going down.
I have to adjust the physics as well for the outfit.
Hold on, but use two different words that are very different. Is your tolerance for unranked going down, and or because craving and tolerance are two very different things?
Okay, let's.
I don't doubt that you crave ranked. But can you tolerate ranked? The more successful you become.
We can lock the blame now. We can add a physic, but the blame later.
For example, I'm much quicker to
lock this shit now.
end things when I see that it's unranked. Let's say it that way. Rather than continue forward, but as I would before. Now I'm much like I'd rather just I'd rather not play than not play ranked.
Okay. Makes sense. So let me ask you again. Do you think that becoming more successful helps
animation here, turn the slow off here,
not help with this problem?
Should I stop
I don't think it's helped me that much. It's definitely giving me a little bit more confidence, faster. But like it's not a one-to-one at all. Like it doesn't.
So let me ask you something, Trent. Let's say you meet someone who looks like the one, right? So she's
kind of leggy
together, she's attractive. She's
in the beginning, but now it's good.
Done a lot of she physically takes care of herself. She's got her career going well, and she's 29. What's in the back of your mind when you see a 29-year-old who's single and has their stuff together?
29 years old.
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't have some judgment.
Very good. What's your judgment?
Why didn't they prioritize that? Like, if they were, if everything is so great, why aren't they with somebody?
Exactly. Right. So you have an insecurity. And interestingly enough, this is the really paradoxical thing. And I appreciate so much that you called in. I appreciate that you've been a part of this community, because we don't usually get to this part with people who are in early members of our community.
Well, thank you very much.
So like now something weird is happening where they're the part of you that is afraid that something is fundamentally off. The more successful you become, the more you're afraid that someone is going to look at you and be like, "Where's the catch?" So it's kind of bizarre, because as you succeed, you were sort of assuming
be above that
the internal sense of something is off is.
It should be. But,
and oddly enough, the more milestones you achieve, the better you look on paper, the more you're concerned that if you meet the one...
the hand is on top, so
she's going to look at you and be like, wait, something's off here. This guy is too good to be true. What's on the other side of the coin?
Later as well.
What do you think about that? Does that resonate with you?
Okay, I should do this.
Probably. I also don't like to show people my weak side in any way, or like
What
I
is
don't
this?
like. I always like to paint the picture that everything is fine. I
Why
have
is
no
this
problems.
here? I didn't erase this shit.
I'm very good at
Oh,
like dealing with other people's
no.
problems. But when
It's
I don't
fine,
like
it's
help,
fine.
I don't like accepting help from
As
other
long
people.
as fuck. Wait, I
And
didn't.
so when I show
Did I?
myself to somebody who might be a prospect in dating, I'm gonna paint the picture that everything is perfect.
Oh my lord. Oh
What is
my
the weak
God.
side?
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
I don't know. I like the insecurities that we were talking about. I
Okay.
guess the fact that obviously I do
I had to
have
glue this as
I'm sure
well.
issues. I'm sure I
Am
have
I?
some sort of blind spots that I can't see.
Yeah, kind of, sort of
Um,
here.
I'm sure there's
yeah,
stuff that
this
I don't
shit
even
here.
know about. So for me, what I try to hide and suppress is probably my need for any sort of reassurance or help or anything like that.
Man, I did that. Adjust
Okay.
these things.
There's, it's getting a little. We're adding layers to the onion. But let me ask you something. How are you sure you have issues?
Kind of drawing from the conclusion that if I didn't, I wouldn't be in this situation.
It's kind of hard to
Okay.
see here.
So
Okay.
like here's the
Oh
weird thing.
fuck! Shouldn't pick that.
Let's assume that like there's a certain amount of this that's RNG.
Yeah.
How would you tell if like how are you going to know whether you have issues or don't have issues? How would you be able to tell the difference?
I wouldn't.
So
I
like
wouldn't be able to.
this is important to understand, Trend. So like it's kind of weird because it's like you believe you have issues because you haven't found a relationship that is long lasting and fulfilling at the age of 28. But like you may not, and then that belief that there's something in you that is left unresolved is exactly what you're afraid is going to screw up meeting the one,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But then like this is kind of a weird self-fulfilling prophecy because what if you actually don't have issues? So then you have nothing to worry about in the relationship because you're 28 and the average age at which people are forming long-lasting relationships is like statistically increasing.
Yeah, no, I completely see your point. Kind of shooting myself in the foot.
Right? So I think that you're...
Wait, where's the
it's kind of weird
second
because when I ask
outfit?
you, like, how are you sure you have issues? They're like, there must be a blind
Wait,
spot
where's
because
the
I don't see anything, but it's
fucking
gotta be
layers
there.
above?
That in and of itself, that conclusion is
Wait
coming
a
from the
damn
insecurity
minute.
that there's something
Oh
fundamentally
yeah, it's still
broken.
here. Okay, it's good.
Yeah.
I thought I
And
missed
then
it,
we
but
get
it's
into the
it's
situation
fine.
where, okay, so like let's take a
thought I
step back
missed
and
it.
run it from the beginning.
I think I do that later
Somewhere
first
along the
before
way,
this one.
you were
This one might be
concerned
tricky,
that
so I do
you
this
could
one
not
first.
offer some. That's not the right
A
phrasing.
lot of shit here.
Somewhere along the way, you were concerned
And
that
we have-
despite being a successful, good, caring human being, that there's some part
Wait,
of
the
you that is
chest.
going to screw up a relationship and that
Where's
someone
the
would like
top
discover
neck?
at some point and then break up
It's
with you.
not here.
It's like something
Perfectly said.
fundamentally messed up with Trend.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
It's not
That's in a
here.
Okay. So then Trend did what a good person is supposed to do. They started working
Wait.
on themselves.
Let
Right?
me
That's what we tell
check the
everyone. Work on
file. It's
yourself.
not here
And Trend worked
somewhere.
on himself. So he started exercising, hopped jobs for a little while, found a good career, grinded at
Yes.
it, did a lot of self-development work, now has a decent career, now is in decent shape, is a good friend, can accept responsibility,
Where
can
the
face
fuck is
challenges,
it?
can support people emotionally.
It's
Right?
not exist.
And then each of those things you
Here.
thought, okay, at some point this is going to fix the fundamental
It should be
insecurity.
above this.
Yes.
And it didn't fix
Above
the
all of
fundamental
it?
insecurity. So now we've got this kind of weird
And it's
situation
not
where
visible here. It should
you
be
don't even know
below
what
this.
to fix anymore because everything that you
Yeah,
saw
there's a
that
neck
was
here,
wrong,
and then
you
there's
worked on,
nothing
right?
else. So
Yeah.
So you-
I missed that layer.
And so now the confusing thing is like
Okay.
there's some part of you that feels that something is off, and that if you date, if you run into the one, like eventually they're going to look at you. You're
Mondo.
28. They're going to say,
Okay,
"This guy
take
looks
this one.
perfect. What's the catch? What's the catch? What's the catch?" And you don't know what the catch is,
Yeah.
but you're afraid they're going to figure it out. And so
Yes.
then, since you're
something.
fundamentally afraid that you may not succeed in a relationship because there's this big boogeyman in the closet that you don't know what it is, you have a blind spot to it, you've worked on everything that you know how to work on. You're afraid that they're going to
is
look
here,
at signs
but
in
it's
your
never
life
been
like
renamed
28,
yet, so
career,
it's not available,
exercises,
kind of.
single, like there's got to be something.
Yeah.
Right?
Should have renamed it.
And so interestingly enough, like
Add in, so it should be. Good
then
now.
what happens is you've got a choice when you start dating. And the people that you're more attracted to, you're afraid.
Okay, it's gonna take a while to like
that they're gonna discover this thing. It's
import
almost
this
like you're an
shit
imposter.
back in.
You're like a broken person pretending to be a put together person.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you?
I had that in my job at the beginning when I started as well.
Should just grab this
syndrome,
part
for the first like 6 month-ish of that.
Maybe.
So till I kind of got enough confidence by succeeding and taking on challenges and failing sometimes, of course, and learning from failures. I'm not perfect by any means, but it's just that I at least I felt like I was given the chance to kind of try and learn, and I felt like in a relationship perhaps it's if I mess up, then that's it.
Yeah. So who's not giving you the chance to try and learn in a relationship?
Oh, me.
100%, right? And you're even then, Trent, you're doing in a sense, quote unquote, the right thing, which is that you keep on queuing for unranked.
This might take a lot of times.
It makes perfect sense because you don't want to risk
a lot of times.
Like
at least 5 minutes.
The possibility of the perfect relationship while you're inexperienced.
So,
you want to work out all of these kinks with people that you're not even invested in.
Yeah.
And so you're queuing up for unranked where people are like drunk and smurfs and feeding and like trying out wonky things. They're not playing the game seriously. And now you've even gotten frustrated with that because you've realized this is actually not what I want to play.
It's going to take a lot of time.
Because what if you lose a game? What if the one comes across, they see that you're broken. They see that, oh my God, Trent is just faking it. He's faking it. He's faking it. He's pretending to have his stuff together, but deep down he doesn't have his stuff together. And you're afraid of risking it. So how does your mind protect you from screwing up the perfect relationship, Trend? What does it do?
Don't even try.
100%. And what is not trying? How does it convince you not to try?
You're going to fail. Or, yeah, probably that.
I think this is where the red flags come in.
I see.
Yeah,
it finds faults in other people.
100%. Right? It gives you reasons. It says, because it's going to protect you because there's no way that your mind is going to let you, because imagine how you would feel if you met the one and you screwed it up. How would you feel? Horrible. It's just going to reinforce and confirm the fact that you're fundamentally broken. You're not actually, but so that's not really a fact.
Yeah.
Right? So, and your mind is like, oh crap, we love Trend. We want to take care of Trend. We can't let him realize that his deepest, darkest fears are true.
Damn.
And so what it does is it finds red flags. It says, oh, no, that's not the one. You see all these things that are wrong with them, don't bother. But then something subtle happens. As you point out red flags, do they move into the unranked category in your mind?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Right? So maybe they do. But what I'm sort of saying is there are people that you're invested in and people that you're not invested in. People that you're not invested in, you can date. But when you meet someone that you're invested in and you find red flags, you actually knock them completely off. You don't move them into this category and start dating them.
Yeah, no, I don't even give them a chance at that point.
Exactly, right? So it's not actually unranked. You're not moving him into the low value category.
You're right.
You just avoid them entirely.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? And that's to protect yourself from the rejection and the confirmation. It's not just the rejection, it's the confirmation that you can't succeed in a relationship. That something's fundamentally wrong. Because that's going to because here you are putting together your life,
halfway
hoping
there.
for the confidence, hoping for the confidence, hoping for the confidence.
There's a lot of layers,
so in the back of your mind, there's this thing that's like, oh crap, what if something actually is, busted?
Yeah, absolutely.
And as long as you never queue up, you are never going to be truly rejected. And then there's the hope that actually, if you keep working on it, keep on, playing unranked and getting better career and getting better this and better that, there's this part of your mind that says, okay, the confidence will come eventually. But the interesting paradox, what really keeps you stuck there is that the more you succeed in the rest of your life, the more that this other complex pops up, which is like, where's the catch?
Yeah.
So you really seem like you can't move in any direction, right? You can't actually queue up for ranked. You can't actually give a real relationship a shot because what if you screw it up? Even if you keep on working on other dimensions of your life, that's going to just terrify you more, that the more put together you are. If you become a, multi-millionaire and then you've got a super nice house and you're, super in shape and you're very emotionally available and you've got a fancy car and all this kind of stuff. Like the more that you meet people, the more they're going to be like, what's wrong with this guy? So paradoxically, even advancing is like reinforcing the insecurity.
Definitely. And I think external expectations are also increasing around me for, I'm getting to that age where a lot of people, my friends are getting married or getting into serious relationships.
Right, my friend have kid already.
Many times, but they're starting to ask, when are we going to have...
The kid going to kindergarten already.
A Mrs. Trend, where are we going to have,
man.
grandchildren?
What am I doing here?
Yeah, so we're going to have, and sure, I'm not, super pressure, but I definitely feel it from all sides. And internally, it reinforces this, I better get moving, or not even that. It's more like, why haven't I gotten moving?
There it is. Well said, Trent. Right? It's beautifully put. So now, Trent, okay, so now we understand it. What are we going to do about it, bro?
Well, like you said, I think I've been stuck, paralyzed between the idea of not taking a risk because I'm too worried of the consequences of it failing. But the only way I can see is to just give it a chance. It's a lot easier said than done, of course. But one thing for sure was to acknowledge that I don't want to waste other people's time. Like, I don't want to just be not serious with somebody because they don't mean that much to me. I don't want to hurt other people. I don't want to compromise their emotions. So I'd rather just kind of aim more carefully and recognize more carefully somebody who might be a potential for me. And that way, if I do kind of set my eye on somebody and they like me too, and I can see, I'd have to be more self-aware if I'm making up certain things about them. Like,
very good.
Is this person actually this, and this? Or are they just, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they're, maybe I'm making it up, or is this my fear of messing it up because I can see this is going somewhere?
Good. So let's try to make it a little easier for you. So I think essentially it's the right answer, but let's try to there isn't a right answer, but it makes a lot of sense to me. So let's try to help you become aware. Let's try to detail out what you should be aware of. The first is notice that your mind is making red flags for people. Okay. Now, here's the thing. When you see a red flag, then you have to try to figure out, is this a real red flag or is this an artificial red flag? And so the key thing there is to ask yourself, is this red flag an excuse I can use to
I'm back.
end a relationship with someone?
Okay, we get this shit.
Really
let's see if we get anything else here.
I realize that's a long sentence, but that's the
extra things,
right?
Yeah.
Is this my mind's way of protecting me? Am I going to reject them before they reject me?
It's only one layer, I think. Okay, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
I have to put this in place now.
Then I'm not saying that you have to date them, but at least acknowledge that and ask yourself, can I actually... Am I, is the fear too strong?
From the outfits.
Or can I actually, give this a shot? And the neat thing is when you notice that your mind is doing that, the power of that is actually going to decrease and the fear will be easier to overcome.
Yeah, part.
The next thing to kind of think through is that notice that
this one.
All of your successes don't necessarily deal with the source of your insecurity. Right? So this is a samskar. So when you develop a lack of confidence that comes from one part of your life, fixing another part of your life doesn't translate into fixing this insecurity. So here's the tricky thing is you started to believe at some point that you were unlovable.
Let's hide the hair
important to you.
first.
Yes. Now, that may have something to do with divorced parents. You never really know. I'm not saying that they didn't love you, but the child
might have.
right? So it's little things you know, parents, like if you're moving houses and things like that.
I should have fixed the shadow as well. I should have done that as well.
A weekend, or your mom swapped a weekend so that they could go on a date. And like, that's where you realize like,
Anyway.
oh, like this person, you know, cares about other people more than they care about me or something like that. We don't necessarily need to go into that. My point is that the source of the insecurity cannot be
Let's do
fixed
one by one.
directly by putting together other
buttons.
stuff. So you may need to look into the source of that insecurity. Do you have a sense of where that comes from?
I did some, so I've been using the Healthy Gamer Guide to kind of analyze myself. I've done a little bit of
This in the
therapy
neck.
as well in the past
Good for you.
couple of years, just a few sessions here and there.
Nick
It definitely
Lean,
helps
so it's
understand
this
that a lot
one.
of these things come from childhood. My parents, as you said, they did get divorced. I'm sure it had some sort of an impact. They lived also in different countries, so I didn't get to see one of my parents for like 6 months at a time.
There's a way to do this faster.
There's a lot of stuff there, and nothing, extremely traumatizing,
wait,
but stuff
where the
that
fuck
would
is
make
it?
you kind of understand how I would get to the point where I feel like I
maybe we
either
can use
needed
this
to
one
be the
over
best
here.
kid to get attention, or to be
Wait, shit,
responsible
where?
for one of my parents' emotions. So I had to
Oh,
be,
you can
like,
shift
always
click
the good kid.
and it's gonna move it there.
So that kind of developed into something down the line, I would say, that
So-
therapy kind of helped me
here,
realize.
and then it
Very
moved
good.
this. Yeah.
So like this is very common, but
This. Okay.
being the best kid to get attention reinforces the idea that fundamentally you don't deserve attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so interestingly enough, I think that could relate to what you were saying, what we were saying earlier about the more success you actually have, the
It's
more
just
concerned
fine, I
someone may
guess.
be that there's like something that they're missing. Right? Because
Yeah.
it's sort of artificially, it's
Yeah, it's
using
an engagement, so
achievement
it's fine.
to justify attention. And so the more successful you become, it's kind of the same parallel where it's like there's this external sense which should justify you wanting to be in a
outfits
relationship with me.
too.
But does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. And I think what you touched on earlier of the trying to make up for one lack with another success is
Yes.
definitely what I didn't think I didn't really
should take
realize I was
layers
doing
by
that until you
layers,
just said
I feel like.
but that's definitely my mindset maybe might have been, which
Or they
brought
can have
some
mismatch
positive
is
things,
fine
obviously,
as
but
well.
Very
didn't
good.
didn't make up for the initial
Hold
problem.
on.
Great. So you're in a healthy place, Trent, because I think now you've realized that being successful in part is to, in a sense, make up for the fact that you feel insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can give you a lot of success,
Okay,
which
the
is fantastic.
second
But now
outfit,
you need to grow past that, right? Now you need
they
to
can
realize
have
that
more
and this is where
option
sort of dealing with the
to-
source of the insecurity. Hopefully, you'll kind of understand that.
Match the outfit.
The person
they can
who's
off the
the
inside
one,
and
we'll
still
get to
have
this
the
in a
thing
second.
outside.
The person who's the one is gonna
Which
be
might look
okay
great.
with the fact that you're not perfect. Because a good relationship is not about two perfect people getting together. It's about two people who are works in progress, helping
I can
each
do that,
other
I
in a
think.
positive way.
So is this one
That's
is
very comforting. Honestly.
0, and then
I don't
it's gonna
expect
turn on
perfection
in the
from a
middle.
partner at all. I don't know why I see that. I don't see that.
But
in
you
reverse,
want
though.
to give them
But
a
there should be
perfect
one more where it's just
exactly.
turn
So
this
I don't
off
expect it
later
from them,
on.
but I expect it from myself for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'll
so
adjust this
next
later.
thing to consider is, when you are dating that person, we'll just kind of like double down on that point.
Yeah, I'll
is that,
adjust this later.
This
I
kind of
think
goes back to like the logical trap
Okay, not
of
that one.
blind spots, right? So you've worked on everything that
This
needs
one
to be worked
is
on, and now
in,
we're doing a little bit more work, which is good. But you've got to be super careful about the way you conclude that you're not ready for a
fuck.
relationship.
I just
Because
organize this better.
If you were ready, you actually wouldn't know because you just assume that there's another blind spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like
So-
the next one.
Exactly. So, like, how do you know when you're ready if you're always assuming that there's going to be a blind spot or there's something that you missed or there's something fundamentally wrong with you, which is why you're 28 and single? And so, interestingly enough, I think that's because that comes from the feeling, and you can't logic your way out of a feeling. There's a feeling that there's something wrong with me. And as long as that feeling is there, you're going to continuously think that you're not ready for a real relationship. And so just kind of be aware of that and
this
recognize
one.
that you're setting yourself
Gotta
up
rec
for
this
a standard
on this.
that you will
Oh,
never
fuck,
be
I
able
shouldn't
to
click
meet.
this.
Because no matter how much you work on yourself, no matter how
move it
successful you become
here
professionally, no matter
to-
how handsome you
Oh, it
are,
doesn't work like that.
no matter what happens, there's going to be a part of your mind that may still be like,
Yeah.
oh, but what about
Yeah.
this? We may be missing something. And since you don't know what that is because you fixed everything you've seen, it's so paralyzing to actually go into a
Okay.
real relationship. Because it's like there's something wrong and I can't see it, I can't see it, I can't see it. How can I possibly enter a real relationship and screw it up until I fix this thing?
Perfectly said.
Right? But then how do you even know that something's wrong? Where do you get that idea?
You're enlightening me, honestly, because I think I've just been working off from the conclusion backwards of the if there was nothing wrong, then I wouldn't be in the situation, coupled with the whole initial insecurity which I was trying to make up with other things in my life.
Very good. Right?
So
And so,
should be
going forward,
it's
the
still
last thing
deep
I'll
on
kind of
this
leave you
one.
with, Trend,
So
and
it's
then you're
this
welcome
one?
to ask questions and stuff if you've got them, is like,
over here. So
even if there is something wrong with you, that's okay.
This. Can you copy
Right?
this?
So what I want you to really be reassured by is
Can you
not,
copy the
you're not
former and
perfect. I mean,
paste
no
it?
one's perfect. And that's okay. What I want you to really
can I?
appreciate, if you can, is that when you enter a relationship with someone that you're actually like invested in, what you're giving them is not a finished product, but what you're giving them is someone who's willing to work to move forward. And so no matter what the flaw is, no matter what they say about your, like, why are you single? Because the question will come up.
Yeah.
And that's where you can even be a little bit honest and you can say, like, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
For a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me. And then, like, I
One
put
by
my life
one.
together in a really meaningful way. But, like,
I'm just doing some taco
I feel
shit.
like
It's
I'm
kind of
missing something,
boring.
but I just don't know what it is. And it's okay to say that.
Just moved in the right deformer
And then
that
you
I
can
make
even use a little
before.
bit of a, Dr. K
And then
technique,
just
and you can sort of ask them, like, what do you think
Make an
is wrong
extra
with me?
taco to turn it off and on.
Right? And how do you feel about asking that question to someone you care about?
Well, it goes back to the friends or relatives. When I would ask them, they would tell me, like, hey, why aren't you with anybody? Like, you seem like to be doing great, you seem to be moving on with your life, you seem to be quite well off, not necessarily financially or anything, but just like as a human being. So, like, if I were to ask them, I would be genuinely curious to know, if a potential partner, let's say, and I asked them, hey, what do you think is wrong with me? And the answer, if they told me nothing, I would somehow have doubt in that. Like, I would somehow doubt their answer. Not because I distrust them fundamentally, but, I hate to say this because it just seems so pessimistic, but I would be like, well, you just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Which,
So,
I mean, again, seeing something I don't even know
I'll
about.
be
so then how are you
What are
confident
doing?
that there's something there to see?
Exactly. No, that's basically the
Just doing some
Yeah, so
boring
I
stuff
think
now.
asking a potential partner is going to be really, really potentially important to you.
I don't think
Here's
there's
why.
much physics to
Trent,
do
there's a
here,
big
actually.
difference between asking your mom what's wrong with me, and they're saying, "Oh, you're so beautiful, beta. You're Trent. You're so handsome, and you're
one.
catch for anyone." That's actually not going to reassure you. But the whole point is that when you ask someone that you care about, and they say, like, 'cause that's the
not in
opinion
the
that matters,
chest.
right? This is what you're afraid of.
Oh, the tummy. Okay, it's this
And
one.
when you ask them, like, hey, what do you see? Like, do you see something, like, fundamentally wrong? Because, like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
This one.
And when they say, I don't see anything,
Just make some taco right now.
that's when
Organize
you
stuff.
need to, like, be a little bit
Kinda-
careful.
kinda boring.
Right? So that's where, like, you got to think about where you are in the relationship. And you can
Needed
say, like,
armor,
I'm
medium.
happy to hear that. The right answer is, if
There's
at
two
some
outfits,
point
so there's
I
a
do
lot of things to
something
do.
that makes you feel like,
Just some
is
taco
out of
stuff.
line or anything like that, please let me know because I'm working on myself.
Another one like this one as well. It's kind of like
Yeah, definitely. And I'd be completely open to that as
Oh,
well.
it's like it's
Perfect.
well.
I'm always
man.
open to feedback, and to kind of working on
I
things
guess
that
whatever.
either
No,
or other
I
people
turn
see.
it on
Yeah,
like that.
so you
I
wanna-
can hear it.
It's okay for you to doubt, right? Because
Yeah.
like you're gonna need to hear that.
I
from
don't
them
talk
a
that
couple of
much,
times.
so-
And at the same time, just because this is like theoretically an early stage romantic relationship,
turn this off and on
you don't
later.
want to double down.
There's two
on,
outfits.
You're wrong.
That's
You just
that's the
haven't
point.
seen it yet. You know?
No, that would be internal.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So good. I'm glad you're sort of separating that. And then eventually, like the second time you have that conversation, the third time you have that conversation, it's useful to also
add some
use
small
like
physics,
language, like
clothing
there's a part
physics.
of me. So
Maybe.
the third time
Not
you have it,
sure.
when you're feeling more confident in the relationship, you can lean on that person to help you, deal with
this
that,
one, the
build
same
that
place,
confidence,
I
and you
feel
can
like.
sort of say, there's a part of me that like
Maybe
is
put in the
terrified
no,
that
not-
one day, like there's something I did
Wait.
not expect that I'm going to kind of screw up.
Yeah, like this one.
And don't own it as truth. Acknowledge that it's a part of your mind that has an insecurity.
I'm not planning to
Because
talk
you don't want to
much.
put the
I'm trying
burden
to
of
stay
fixing
focused, but
all of your insecurities
it's
on
not
them
working.
in one conversation, which is sometimes the way that we
Abs,
actually
yeah,
sabotage
abs.
relationships.
Yeah.
I love how toggle wanna.
Sound
This toggle is just
Questions before we wrap
the
up?
basic to turn it off and on. I will have to make the
No, I think that
transition
was really,
later.
really, really helpful.
Yeah, it's less
and
boring. Right
I
now, it's
really
just
appreciate
up and
your
on,
time
like
and everything that you're doing.
opacity and stuff.
Thank you
It's
so
really
much for
boring.
hearing me out and for doing everything
Yeah.
that you do. And thank you to everybody. Hopefully, this helped somebody else as
Okay.
Oh, Trent, I think it's going to help a ton of people.
well. I'm happy,
right.
and hopefully,
Oh, wait,
I'll,
this is-
I'll implement the
Okay,
things we're
off
talking
here,
about.
on here.
Can I offer you a
Oh, it's
kind
a
word
strong
as
one.
well?
Absolutely.
So I just want to say thank you for coming on, because I think that this is the kind of thing that
Okay.
we talk about issues of lack of confidence with people who really, really struggle with confidence. What I really appreciate about you calling in is that as we work
Working on something as well,
ourselves,
so let's go together.
interestingly
Nice.
enough, it doesn't just fix all the problems. And even as we work on ourselves, the way
trying to
that
finish
we build
this before
confidence, we really
accept-
have to sort of tackle it head on.
Not accepting, but like
ironically, we can't
start
really
working
tackle
on
it head
new
on until we've
commissions.
tried to fix all the other
I
dimensions
have like
of our life.
6 or something lined
And
up
so I
right
really
now.
appreciate all the work that you've put in,
Yeah.
because I think we're getting to explore
Maybe more. I'm not sure.
a level of insecurity in relationships and self-sabotage that oftentimes
Yeah,
we don't
next month on April,
explore.
I think
And
I
so
have like
I'm
at
so glad
least
that you
6
put in the
right
work,
now.
and I'm actually like very hopeful
Not really accept
and
yet,
oddly enough
but-
confident, even though I don't know you.
Yeah,
I'm
6 or
confident
more.
that you
Not
really
sure.
can end up in a very positive, healthy, long-term
Yeah,
relationship.
just try to just like finish this
Thank you very
first.
much. It means,
And after that,
it
I can
means a lot
accept
to me.
more.
And I wish you a great day.
You
Fuck,
too. Take
yeah,
care.
I try
Take care.
to,
Thank you. Bye.
do less commission.
So let's just do a quick summary.
It's gonna have more times to work on other stuff.
When we grow
Yeah.
up with a lack of confidence
I'm really bad at like
and we struggle with dating, we're told, put your life
decline
together. Focus on
offers
yourself.
from others. So
And so we do all those things.
yeah,
And as we put our life together, something kind of tricky
Take
can
care,
happen.
yes.
Is that
Don't die.
as we start to put
Yeah,
our life
try not
together and
to.
we're sort of ready to date, as we crave dating, sometimes
if it's
what
too
we'll
much,
do
I'll
is
just
actually
blow
create
commission for like 1 month or
artificial
something
red flags
to work
in
on my
our mind
stuff.
to step away
Which is
from
on
the
May.
relationships that
On
we
May,
actually
I
want.
will just stop
sort of
taking commission
self-sabotage
on that
when we're
month
really like when there's someone that we have a
and do
potential of having a real
also
connection.
no projects
And that
stuff.
self-sabotage actually comes from a place of
Maybe on
paradoxically,
April I
like,
will
protection.
work harder than I
Because
should.
Despite the fact that we've grown in a lot
to
of
find enough
dimensions,
money to like cover on
sometimes
for
growing in
May.
a lot of dimensions doesn't solve that
Yeah.
fundamental insecurity.
wait,
And then
the
we
pad
get
is not
into
working.
a very interesting trap,
BTS
which is that
React
the more
is
that we put
not
our
turned on yet.
lives together, the more we start to be afraid that something is like wrong with us and that someone will see
think it's
through all
on
of the
now.
false work that we've done.
Okay.
If I'm 28 years old and I have a successful career and I'm in shape and
this
stuff
is
like
a good
that,
plan? Yeah.
and I start to date someone that I care about, we're
I don't use
terrified
that
of
much
the question,
money anyway,
why
so
are you single?
it's fine.
Why are you still single? Why haven't you? If you're so perfect, like what am I
I
missing?
can just do 2 commission and then
And it's the fear
just stop
that
because I don't
they're
use
gonna
much
see
at all.
that. And the fear of rejection when they sort
enough
of
money.
realize that we're not everything that we pretend to be, that causes us to actually withdraw from the relationship. And so even though we want that relationship, we actually
To be
will
honest,
come
I
up with
don't need to work.
excuses
I think
not
I have
date the
found
people that
it
we
like
actually
make
wanna
enough
date.
money last
Because
year.
we're afraid that something like they're going to realize that
So this year I don't have to
there's something
work.
going on here. So paradoxically, sometimes
But
the more successful we become,
working is fun.
the more we sort of start to be afraid that something's fundamentally wrong with us because I'm so successful. Why am I still
where am
single?
I?
Well, in order
this
to
shit,
balance
okay.
that out, right? Because if I become successful
This
over
thing,
here,
I will
in
have
order
to
to balance
adjust
that
it.
out, I need something very,
Because
very
it
negative. And I
might
just
be
don't know
out of
what it is because
place
I
a
fixed
little
everything
bit.
that I needed to work on. And so paradoxically,
This thing
like,
is
the
will be
more
out of
we
place a lot.
succeed, the more we
This
feel
area
paralyzed in terms
might
of
have
dating.
to
And sometimes
glue
that can
this part
manifest
together
actually
as well.
self-sabotage. So fantastic
Yeah.
caller, and thank you very much for calling in.
Yeah, might have to. Just put this in place and adjust later. Okay, let's turn on a new podcast.
About anxiety. And by the end of today, we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety.
Okay.
And by the end of the lecture, I'd love to equip you with some basic understanding of anxiety. Starting with what is anxiety, how does it form, how does it manifest in the present, and how to approach it.
Oh, shit is loud as fuck. Holy fuck, my ears. Damn.
The truth of the matter is that anxiety is getting worse at an alarming rate.
Okay.
And this video is for 3 kinds of people. The first is it's for people who may have gotten treatment for anxiety, but are looking to better understand the problem
I don't know.
or kind of improve what they can do about it.
Okay.
The second thing is that this is a video for people who may have tried anxiety treatment, but found that it didn't really work for them very well. And we're going to dive into a little bit about why that could be. And the third thing is this is a video for people who just want to understand anxiety, who may not need to engage in treatment, aren't really interested in it, maybe it's not that severe, and you just want to understand a little bit about how this stuff works within you. Hey there, thanks for watching, and I'm glad these videos have been helpful. A lot of times I'll read the comments
this shit
and
is...
see people asking, well, what do I actually do about
This shit
it?
might be a bit complicated.
And unfortunately, the resources out there haven't been that great, which is precisely why I started
because the lag is on this layers.
Trained on a curriculum that integrates my understanding of what motivates us, what
this shoe might be
us,
tricky.
Most importantly, what leads to lasting behavioral change. If you're ready to take the next step, HG coaches can help you build the life that you want. They've helped people build careers, help people find relationships, build networks of friends, and even do things like discover their passions or pursue hobbies. So if this sounds like something that you'd be interested in, check out the link in the description below. So let's start by understanding a little bit about what we know already and also what we've learned recently. So the biggest problem that I see today with anxiety is that we view it as a mental condition. And there's kind of like a good reason for this, right? So if we look at our initial explorations of anxiety in the West,
should I put
they were done by people like
psychoanalysts.
So people like Freud and Jung would talk to other people and understood anxiety as a process of the mind. And they're not wrong, right? So based on a lot of the discoveries they made, and some of those we'll share with you all today, really solid stuff. We've developed treatment protocols like cognitive behavioral therapy or psychodynamic therapy that actually statistically improve people's experience of anxiety. So that's great. It's like kind of a mental thing. The challenge, though, is that a lot of recent research that we've discovered shows that anxiety is not localized to the mind. And this sort of like makes sense if you stop and think about it. We as human beings are like whole organisms, right? And our brain exists within our body. And even the functions of our mind can be influenced by what's going on in our brain and even be influenced by what's going on in our body. So I think one of the reasons that we're seeing anxiety get worse, despite the fact that we're spending more money on research, despite the fact that we're training a bunch of therapists, despite the fact that we're like investing a lot in brain science and all this kind of stuff, like why is anxiety getting worse? It's because the professionals that usually deal with anxiety are specialized in the mind, right? So if you look at a therapist or psychologist, chances are they're not a medical doctor, but they're someone who's focused entirely on the mind, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not an indictment to therapists. And let's remember that they have effective methods, right? We have effective methods. But their education is lacking in certain major areas that we've actually discovered now contribute to anxiety, like the heart and autonomic nervous system, and even stuff like brain-gut stuff and gut microbiome. So we're going to be diving into that. So this is why I think even we've had a lot of people in our community who have gone to see therapists, and this is what's kind of frustrating, right, is if someone complains about anxiety on the internet, people will say, go see a therapist. And that is a great move. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for it. You should absolutely do it if you've never done it before. But also that some people that doesn't seem to help some people or doesn't help them enough. And so that's why we're going to be talking about sort of a start to finish perspective on anxiety. So let's start by understanding what anxiety is. So anxiety is essentially a heightened baseline of worry around projected threats. So generally speaking, our mind and our body has a whole system that is designed to respond to threats. Okay. And this is where like our adrenaline is going to increase, our heart rate is going to increase, we're going to make changes to our gut. So there's all kinds of changes that our body and brain and mind are going to make anytime we're faced with a stressor. So the real challenge with anxiety is that what is a true stress, what is an actual stress, and what is a perceived stress is messed up. So whereas 99 people may think this is something that you don't need to worry about, your brain is telling you, hey, this is a real threat. So the first thing to understand about anxiety is it is a heightened awareness or a heightened emphasis on potential threats. And so for a normal person, what they may experience is they're not worried about it because the possibility of it happening is like pretty low. So I don't need to stress out about stuff that like may not happen, right? If you've struggled with anxiety, you're going to think that that's like absolutely insane. You have to think about everything that may not happen because that is how you avoid those negative situations and protect yourself. So if that's something you resonate with, that is the crux of anxiety. There are real threats that our body responds to, brain responds to, mind responds to.
It's acceptable, kind of.
Threats. And the problem is that people with anxiety move the perceived threats into the real threat column. And so everything feels like a real danger, and our body, our brain, and our mind respond accordingly. They tell us to freak out. So let's understand how that calibration gets messed up. So most people with anxiety have some kind of negative experience in childhood that teaches them to be worried. So anxiety is a problem in adulthood or maybe adolescence, but at its core, it's actually a survival strategy or an adaptation. So let's kind of put ourselves in the shoes of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, right? So this is a 5-year-old or 6-year-old that maybe has an alcoholic parent. So how does the 5-year-old survive in this situation? They have to think
find a way to
about the parent a lot, right? Because what are your tools as a 5-year-old? Can you create
put it on the
space? Are you financially
and then adjust the top part, which would be easier?
Adjust your diet? Can you create sort of like boundaries around how you manage your emotions? Can you use a meditation app to manage your emotions? Can you effectively communicate using words and theory of mind and empathy to calm people down? Of course not. You can't do any of that.
There is better way, which is
how can I
reverse masking the
parent comes home,
fit,
they're drunk.
and then
what
just
are
have to do
all
this
the things that you can think
normal
through,
way,
all the possibilities
without
of how you're going to deal with
worry
if
about
this,
the
if they're feeling like this, if they're
fit
feeling like this.
below.
I got to clean up my room before they come home so they don't get pissed off.
Yeah,
right. So you start to think and engage in behaviors to try to adapt to this circumstance.
Not sure.
And so what you learn as a 5-year-old, and remember, this is like the part of the time where our brain is like learning the fundamentals of how the world works. So we're learning things like how does gravity work, right? So how strong is gravity? How are relationships formed? How do I deal with challenges?
Put the top part first. I'll adjust this later.
Discover is that the way that I deal with challenges is I think about it a lot. And I will think about it so I can figure out how to best adapt to it, because fundamentally, I cannot change the outward problem. I just have to think my way to success. This is the crux of how anxiety is born. These kids then carry that into adulthood. So how do I approach problems?
Wait, is that in the right place?
Through communication? Do I approach problems through boundary setting? No. If I have a problem, I am going to think through it until I figure out what is the best way to solve it. Because that's the only thing that works. And remember that these 5-year-olds, this works for them, right? This is why anxiety is so hard to kick. Is because when you're 5, you have no power but what goes on in your head. The only option you've got is to think through 1,000 scenarios and think about how you're going to handle each one. And then when your mom or dad comes home, that's when you activate some plan. But fundamentally, you are not in control, and so you have to plan for contingencies. And this is what happens.
Rotated a little bit that I didn't know of.
So now let's bring that person to adulthood. What's the strategy that your brain learned?
Still fine on this place,
but and when you were learning how to talk, what else did you learn? You learn that if there is a problem out there, fundamentally, I can't fix the problem. So what I have to do is deal with it, right? And the more that I think about it, the more effective my strategies will be. And this is where people who are anxious will oftentimes invest a ton of energy for even a tiny amount of control or a tiny amount of improvement. It's fundamentally not a good trade, but it's the only trade that their brain learned how to make. So now you're thinking about all these scenarios, and you even recognize as an anxious person that thinking about this doesn't help. And yet you do it anyway. Why is that? It's because that's what your brain learned how to do.
I think I know
when your brain developed this strategy, when it learned how to play the game, it had the power and abilities of a 5-year-old. And so that's the only strategy it knows how to do. And this is what's so damn confusing about anxiety. Not only for the person who's experiencing anxiety, but for the people around you. They're like, why don't you just ...
degree somehow?
Why don't you just talk to your boss? Why don't you just email your professor and ask him for an extension? It's so confusing, right? And you may be beating yourself up because all you're doing is thinking about it instead of actually doing anything about it. And you're incredibly frustrated by yourself. Other people are frustrated with you and they make it seem so easy. And then you feel terrible about yourself because you're like, why can't I do this? It's a really good question. It's because your brain learned that doing stuff doesn't work. Your brain learned one survival mechanism, which is think it through and adapt to whatever crap comes your way. And this also can become a self-fulfilling prophecy because as you do less about it, right? If you don't email your professor, if you don't have a conversation with your boss, problems will arise. And as problems arise, your worst fears become true. But now, since you've been anxiously thinking about it, you're kind of okay at doing damage control. And then what is the conclusion that your mind comes to? Your mind is like, thank God we spent all of that time thinking through every single permutation and combination, because when our professor did email us and say, hey, where's your paper? What's wrong? Why I haven't received it yet? You had everything planned. And planning leads to survival. So this is the way that the anxious brain works.
Oh shit,
it reaches a new level of homeostasis, which is that it starts to see greater threats and tries to approach problems purely mentally. And this explains kind of the experience of people with anxiety, which is why you can sit in bed and do nothing to solve your problems and anxiously be thinking about it over and over and over and over again. Yeah. So that's things from a mental perspective. And we'll get into a little bit more about how to deal with that. And therapists can absolutely help with that, okay? But there are a couple of other things that I think we need to explore. The first is that our cardiovascular and autonomic nervous system, so this is the system that governs things like adrenaline, relaxation, danger signals. This system is very, very active when it comes to anxiety. And so a big part of what we do, especially as medical doctors, is we'll try to medicate anxiety. Generally speaking, most of our medications have been neurologic in nature, so they affect the brain, but we're starting to see a lot of really interesting research around non-anxiety medications for anxiety. Things that affect your heart rate, things that affect your immune system can also be beneficial for people with anxiety. So let's understand how this works. This is really cool. Our heart adapts to changes. Yeah. Okay? So if you are walking down the street and you get jumped by a pack of wolves, your heart rate will increase. Our body responds to that change. It alters the way that it reacts to a particular environment. So our heart rate goes up, okay? When we're in a relaxed situation, our heart rate goes down. Our body is able to adapt to particular stresses. In people who are anxious, that adaptation ability is weakened. So what we sort of see is that things are always on kind of high alert. So we see less variation in the body's ability to adapt to a stressor because we're already operating at high levels of stress at baseline. And why are we operating at high levels of stress at baseline? That's because we learned as a 5-year-old that the world is a dangerous place. And we can't count on other people. We have to be on high alert all the time. Hypervigilance is a survival strategy, and that gets baked in to our neurons, not just neurons in the brain, but neurons all over the body. Our body's ability to adjust its heart rate in response to stress is blunted in people with anxiety. So we also see this in cases of things like PTSD. So if you look at the heart's ability to modulate its activity, after you get diagnosed with PTSD, your ability to modulate activity goes down. You are always on high alert. There's other really interesting things that people have been able to discover. So some people, some researchers have also been able to predict which emotion you are feeling by looking at your heart rhythm. They can predict with 75% accuracy the way that your heart beat determines your emotion.
How bad do we have to adjust this?
They figured this out, okay? 75% accuracy. We're not 100% of the way there. But we're pretty good at that.
And
so this is where we start to see a whole other realm of consideration about anxiety.
First one,
which is that when you're physiologically active, it's going to change the way that you think. Because remember, our body and brain are moving in concert. It's not like the mind is completely disconnected from the heart. Like those two things work together.
I did, like,
so we know, for example, that adrenaline causes
I can adjust
perceived
this one
threats to become and feel more real. It causes a focusing of
Blue
the
will
mind on the
be
particular
better
threat.
in this
So what do we
case.
see in anxiety? Clinically, we see
This
distractibility.
one, not
It's
too
not
bad, but
distractibility. You're not
still have to use
distracted.
glue here.
You can't
Still have to
focus
do
on
that.
what you want to focus on because your mind is hell-bent on focusing on anxiety. It forces you to focus on the
this
threat.
side.
And this is physiologically mediated. So if we can control our heart rate and if we can control our autonomic nervous system, we will reduce our anxiety. The third angle that a lot of people are not really familiar with, especially when it comes to therapists, and this isn't an indictment on them, it's just they're not trained in that, right? Because we're just learning this stuff, is gut health. So this is super wild, but the bacteria in our gut heavily influence our anxiety level. So there are a lot of different mechanisms at play here. The first is that people with irritable bowel syndrome also have some degree of depression and anxiety.
Oh.
We also see cases like inflammatory bowel disease, which is when you get an autoimmune inflammation of your intestines. When people have autoimmune inflammation of their intestines, they also experience worsening depression and anxiety. So we've also discovered that depression and anxiety are, to a certain degree, inflammatory conditions. Since they're inflammatory conditions, this is wild. If I take a patient with IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, and I give them an immunomodulatory agent, I literally kind of shut off or suppress their immune system, their anxiety improves. You see clinically significant, scientifically valid results of anxiety reduction when I modulate someone's immune system. What is going on there? Let's understand, okay?
Okay.
So we have guts. We have our gut bacteria, okay? Got our intestines and stuff. And in our intestines, we have a lot of bacteria that live there and hang out there. By the way, you have 10 times as many bacterial cells in your body as you have human cells. Okay? That's wild. So you actually, the number of cells in your body is like 9 to 1, 10 to 1 bacteria to human cells. So you've got a ton of bacteria in there. Now let's understand, what are these bacteria doing? So we have a symbiotic relationship with those bacteria. So over 1 million years, 10 million years, whatever, we've grown up as human beings and we have all this bacteria that live in our gut. And the bacteria does stuff for us. Okay. So bacteria will do things like break down food. That's why it lives in our gut. They'll do things like consume particular nutrients, and they will also produce particular nutrients because we have a nice relationship with our bacteria, right? They're going to live in the gut and they're going to farm nutrients for us, and we are going to provide them with some degree of protection and whatnot. There's some bacteria which are healthy bacteria, which do not activate our immune system. Because our immune system has learned, hey, these are our allies. We should not mess with them, right? They're helping us. So now what has changed the most in our society over the last 100 years? Diet. Diet has transformed completely. Twinkies did not exist 100 years ago, right? You didn't get all this different kinds of food. We didn't have frozen food or anything like that. We just ate what was fresh. We ate what was around. We had a very limited kind of food. So then what happens is once we start eating different food, what happens to our gut bacteria? So as we make dietary changes, like let's say I eat a piece of broccoli.
Okay.
So broccoli can be broken down and consumed by certain kinds of bacteria. And those are the commensurate bacteria. Those are the bacteria that help us out. So they break down the broccoli because human beings have been eating broccoli for a while, right? We've been eating like green leafy stuff and foraging and whatnot, potatoes and things like that, a little bit of meat, whatever. And so we will grow the bacteria depending on what we feed them.
Okay.
So now as we eat more processed foods, we are selecting for the bacteria that can eat processed foods. And so have those bacteria been in our guts for 1 million years? Absolutely not. These are new bacteria. They're foreign bacteria. They're the Twinkie-eating bacteria. So as we develop these Twinkie-eating bacteria in our guts, they cause inflammation. Because our body's like, hey, like we've never seen this bacteria before. This guy doesn't belong here. Let's attack it.
Okay.
So as we increase the inflammation in the gut, that inflammation travels all the way to the brain, right? Because when we have an infection, if I have like a cold, let's say, and even though the cold is localized to my nose, I feel the inflammation all over my body. The fever, if I've got like the flu or something like that, is going to be all over our body. So our body will respond in a complete way, in a total way, in a holistic way to even inflammation within the gut. There's also now evidence that certain kinds of bacteria have been linked to Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, as well as anxiety, and we'll get to that in a second. So gut bacteria become really important. Next thing to understand. Gut bacteria will produce things and consume things that we put into our body. So what does this mean? So we know that as psychiatrists, we will prescribe serotonergic medications to help people with anxiety. We will increase the serotonin signal in the brain with medication. So what about gut bacteria? So this is really fascinating. So there are some kinds of gut bacteria that will gobble up the serotonin precursors. So there are certain neurotransmitters, there are certain building blocks. That's where they come from, right? That travel from our gut to our brain. And then we turn those building blocks into things like neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, etc. There are some bacteria that will gobble those up. So if they're gobbling it up, there is not enough building blocks going to the brain to make serotonin or whatever else. There are other bacteria that not only don't gobble it up, but will produce excess and share it with us. This is a trading situation where we give you food in a safe place to stay, and you are going to produce neurotransmitter precursors for us, building blocks. You're going to send them to the brain, and we're going to turn them into neurotransmitters. So as a clinician, when I work with patients with anxiety, the ones that are able to adhere to an anti-anxiety diet are the ones that I can bring off of medication way more easy. I'll start someone on an anti-anxiety medication like an SSRI. If they adhere to good diet for about a year and I pull them off of the SSRI, they do fine. It's the ones that aren't able to adhere to the diet that have more problems.
Maybe the hand physics is not that strong.
So what is our gut bacteria doing for us? Three things. One is the good bacteria is producing neurotransmitters for us, basically. And it's not causing inflammation. And the ones that are bad for us are consuming the building blocks that we need. And furthermore, are causing inflammation. And remember that what is inflammation going to do to your heart? It's going to elevate your heart rate. As inflammation elevates your heart rate, that is going to send signals to your brain to make you more anxious. Wild, right? And this is the shortcoming, is that we don't understand this stuff in clinical practice. We haven't really implemented it yet. So just to give you all an example, there is one bacteria that I kid you not, is called ruminococcus. I have no idea where that name came from. I looked for it. It is literally called ruminococcus, rumination. And when ruminococcus levels are low in the gut bacteria, anxiety is high. The severity of anxiety increases. More people, if you have low ruminococcus levels, chances are you will have anxiety.
It shifts a bit, right? But it's not.
There are 4 or 5 other bacteria that are very focused on anxiety, okay, or related to anxiety. The last thing that we're going to talk about, or maybe second to last, is the mind. So when it comes to the mind, there's a lot that you can do here. There's also where seeing a therapist is a really good idea. But let's understand what the approach in therapy is, okay? Especially for those of y'all that feel like, okay, my anxiety isn't that bad that I need to see a therapist, but I still want to get control of it. This is important to understand. So the first thing that you've got to do is understand the wiring of your brain in terms of what is a threat. So go back, and this is why a lot of therapy focuses on childhood. What are the lessons that you learned in childhood? So in the Vedic model, like this is the model that our coaches use when they're sort of trying to promote wellness, we'll sort of focus on the formation of something called a samskar. So a samskar is like a ball of energy that shapes the way, a ball of emotional energy, that shapes the way that you perceive the world, okay? So when we have a samskar, it triggers this activity in our brain that causes us to perceive things as threats. But that is all based on this ball of emotional energy. So if you go back and you actually pay attention to your experiences in childhood, you will find that even thinking about them will cause tears to come up.
I feel like
will evoke fear and will evoke panic.
I don't think
that means that emotion is sitting there in your brain, in your mind.
Wait, maybe
is shaping the way that you see the world.
Here.
So you have to go back and ask yourself, okay, let's say you're anxious about a particular thing. I'm worried that people will abandon me, let's say. Where did you learn to be afraid that people will abandon you? Chances are it's because you had some kind of traumatic experience in childhood where someone abandoned you. And so then your brain learned, hey, we can't trust people. And so you carry that learning with you forward to the present day. The problem is it helped you survive back then. Now it makes your life hard today. So you have to go back and digest that emotional energy. The second thing that you can do is understand the effect of the anxiety in the present. And now we have to understand something really important about anxiety. When someone is faced with anxiety, as we experience more anxiety, What people with anxiety do is this anxiety is caused by a situation, right? Other people may not believe that it's real, but that's neither here nor there. And so what do you do as someone who's anxious? You try to control the situation, because if you can control the situation, your anxiety will come down anyway. I'm afraid someone is going to break up with me. They could break up with me. This is a real situation. My anxiety is high. How do I fix this? I'm going to get them to promise never to break up with me. I'm going to engage in behaviors to bring down, to control the situation, because if I can control the situation, then the anxiety will come with it. You see, these two things are tied. And so what do people with anxiety do? They try to control the world around them. Controlling the world around you is difficult, arguably impossible. And if you can't control your partner or your boss or your professor or your friends or your parents, what do? You keep trying in your head over and over and over again. And why do you never solve your problems? You never solve the problems because it's someone else. You can't control another human being. Then why don't you quit? Why do you keep trying to solve the problem? Because that is the survival mechanism that you learned. Right? That is anxiety in a nutshell. So we try to control the circumstances around us. We try to control other people to bring our anxiety down. That's a losing formula.
So close to this part.
But that's what we do. So what else?
Just do it manually if it's better.
There are 2 or 3 things to understand here. One is that we can disconnect this. Safe situation, low anxiety. Dangerous situation, high anxiety. We can control this disconnect. We can actually be like this, where our anxiety can be high and the situation can be safe, or the situation can feel unsafe and we don't actually have to control it to tolerate our own anxiety. We can learn how to tolerate anxiety, because this is what people with anxiety don't learn how to do, right? Because what they learn as a survival mechanism is, as a 5-year-old, you can't teach yourself to tolerate anxiety. You just have to deal with it.
Mess up over here.
So what you can practically do is learn how to tolerate some of these anxieties. So this is where, if you look at like evidence-based treatment for phobias, for example, what therapists will do is exposure therapy. So we're going to put you in a situation that activates your anxiety, but we're not going to let you control the situation. You're just going to wait until your body returns to homeostasis, which it will do. Why doesn't that happen in people with anxiety? Because we spend so much time trying to control the situation, escape from the situation, that we never develop the ability for tolerance. Right? If a social situation makes me anxious and I decide to avoid it, what happens to my ability to tolerate negative emotion? It goes down because I'm controlling the situation. And since the situation is controlled, my anxiety is controlled. I never learned tolerance. So this is where I would say sit with it and understand exactly what you are sitting with. It's hard to just sit with it, but understand this is what you should tell yourself.
I should glue.
In this moment, my mind is terrified of this. This feels 100% real.
I should, but it's my effect.
Notice your physical sensations, right? This is my body trying to protect me from this. And this is a reaction that my body learned. If you've done some scar-oriented work or therapy, you can even go back and you say, this is how my body learned to survive here. And tolerate it for as long as you can, right? Start low. Okay, I'm going to go into the social situation for 5 minutes, and I'm not going to pull out my phone for 5 minutes. And then afterward, you can escape into your phone. Go for it, right? So start to learn how to tolerate that negative emotion. As you learn to tolerate the negative emotion, the negative emotion will start to come down.
Yeah.
As the negative emotion starts to come down, you will be able to engage with things around you. Okay? The last thing to consider, kind of related to this, is watch out for the tie between your anxiety and your behavior. So when we are anxious, especially if we have an unhealthy relationship with anxiety, we are going to use behavior to control our anxiety. Right? So I will plead with someone not to break up with me, or I'll start crying, or I'll avoid things. So watch out for that instinctive reaction of behavior to make yourself feel safe, and try not to engage in it right away. This is also a central principle of cognitive behavioral therapy. So if you need help with that, work with a therapist. The last thing, and this is a little bit off the wall, but this has honestly helped a lot of people that I've worked with, is to detach. So if you really look at anxiety usually has to do with the ego. And what do I mean by that? I'm opening a whole new can of worms, which we can do a whole new video about. But if you think about anxiety, The consequence always has to do with you. This person won't like me. This person will think I'm stupid. This person won't respect me. This person won't give me opportunities. This person will break up with me. Anxiety is usually about, sometimes it can be around things like health-related stuff, like, you know, other kinds of fears and stuff. But a lot of times it has to do with ego. It has to do with I in some way. And so there's another process, which is its own thing, of detachment, where you sort of separate yourself from the ego. And so what if someone doesn't like you? So imagine what your life would be like if you were not always trying to shape and control other people's perceptions of you. Because that's what a lot of anxiety turns into. This is how people become doormats. I can't afford to have this person dislike me. And since I can't afford to have this person dislike me, I can never set a boundary with them. Since I never set a boundary with them, I become a doormat and they start to become abusive. Because I don't check their behavior. There's never a consequence for their behavior. And then the anxious person gets stuck. They become frustrated with themselves. They become frustrated with the other person, but they don't know what to do about it. And so the real antidote to all this stuff at the end of the day is detachment. Is to separate yourself a little bit from the ego. Okay,
kind of
so
good.
This person dislikes me.
Already.
So what? Right? And this is what
okay,
people may tell you. Why
bit
do you care
on,
about what this person thinks?
Here.
And you're like, I don't know. I wish I couldn't, but I do. And then how do you solve that? How do you develop that attachment? You go back. Detachment. You go back. When did I learn that I cannot afford to piss anyone off? That's the samskar that is controlling you, that is preventing the detachment. Once again, there are practices that you can do, right? Meditative practices, spiritual practices, things like that.
Not that bad.
That can help you develop
not that bad at all.
A whole path on that.
It's good shit.
In Dr. K's Guide to Meditation. So, but for y'all to understand, this is also where there's studies that show that spiritual perspectives to anxiety can be incredibly helpful. One of the mechanisms through which things like
better.
mindfulness and even some of the
this part
studies on psychedelics show that the mechanism of
bit.
action here is that they separate you from your ego. And so that's another aspect to consider.
It's not
if you're
too
trying to deal
bad,
with anxiety,
maybe just glue it anyway.
I know it's a super challenging and overwhelming topic. But my hope is that if you understand
it's not too
how
bad.
anxiety develops,
it's barely
and what
noticeable
the mechanisms
at
are
all.
In the body and the brain and the mind,
small stuff.
that you can develop a system to kind of tackle it.
But
if you're
let's just
already
do it
working
anyway.
with a mental health professional, my hope is that you can integrate some of this stuff into your existing treatment. If you're not working with a mental health professional, I strongly recommend you get an evaluation. And then you can also, if you don't need to, then you can also use some of these techniques to promote health. Right? And this is another core problem with our system of medicine in the West, is that we treat sickness. We don't build health. And so how does anxiety work in the body and in the brain? First of all, it is a learned experience. It is a change in your baseline to perceive normal things as highly threatening. Why did you learn that? How did you get wired like that? Because that's what you needed to survive. So how can we fix this problem? The first is we can change our diet. We can eat certain foods, healthy diet, things that are more traditionally eaten by human beings. So like, this is where a lot of that sort of like keto diet sort of comes in. It's not so much grains that's necessarily the problem. It's that a lot of these grains are processed, which we didn't grow up eating. So there's a lot of details also on diet. Y'all can check out Dr. K's Guide. Okay. But you can also think about some of those probiotics and things like that. Definitely something to consider. But the more inflammation in your gut there is, the less healthy your gut
it's already kind of good,
the more likely you are to be anxious.
I don't have to change much.
Second organ system we're going to talk about is the heart. And the heart is incredibly important. It's not just the heart, by the way. The heart is just the one thing that we use to measure and capture all the other parts of our body. So if we look at the exercise benefits on anxiety, we're just focusing on the heart. But exercise is going to have benefits on the kidneys, which are going to affect your anxiety. It's going to have benefits on your liver, your skeletal muscle. All of these things will affect your anxiety.
How you doing?
This is the core shortcoming that we see with therapy today, is that therapists are solely trained in the mind. But anxiety does not solely exist in the mind. So you can do everything from heart chakra meditations to exercise.
Yeah.
You got to slow down that physiology. And the last thing that we're going to focus on is the mind. And that's where you have to understand, how did I program this in the first place? Go back to that, digest that emotion, because that will be driving your anxiety. You'll feel that emotion come up, and it's going to be an emotion from the past.
Okay.
And so as you digest and process that emotion, your anxiety will weaken in the present.
Okay.
The next thing that you can do is
how to do this
manage
side.
your anxiety in the present by building the capacity for tolerance
Yeah,
and not engaging in those default behaviors that control the situation. Because the more that you control the situation, the more you are artificially short-circuiting your anxiety. And then if that's the way that you've done things, which is usually how you do things, then you end up with this disaster scenario where the way that I deal with my anxiety is controlling the situation. But if the way that I deal with my anxiety is controlling the situation and I can't control the situation, then what happens? Then you get tortured with anxiety over and over and over again. You're thinking about something for a whole week and you can't fix it, you can't fix it, you can't fix it. But you keep trying, you keep trying, you keep trying. And you're exhausted. As you get exhausted, your frontal lobes weaken, your willpower weakens, you eat unhealthy food. You stop exercising. And then the dominoes start to fall and the anxiety gets out of control. So I sincerely hope that this has been helpful to you today. For you to understand where does anxiety come from? How does it manifest? And what are the different levers that I can pull? Because it's far beyond the mind. And if all that stuff isn't enough, do the spiritual stuff. Check out detachment by all means. And the more you can cultivate that, the more it'll make everything else easy. So good luck.
Put this part up a bit. Review too much here. Okay, not bad. Not bad. Okay, let's find another podcast. Maybe interview this time from Brother K. Playlist. Hold on, let me find something good. Okay, hold on. Interview. I have watched a lot of them. I'm not sure if there's anything else I haven't watched. Interview. But there's been a lot of them, so
I could say all those things.
Let's see. Confident, motivation, worry about future. Oh, that is nice. This is nice. I might need this. This is from like years ago, 1 year ago.
Dr. K's guides to mental health.
Okay.
The guides are organized into 3 modules. So the depression module is designed for people to understand like how depression works, how I think about depression. The anxiety module is for people who are interested in learning more about anxiety, like not just from a clinical perspective, but also understanding from a mental perspective how anxiety works in the mind, like where do anxious thoughts come from, how do they propagate, things like that. You know, something that I'm super excited about is also the meditation module. So for those of you who are curious about understanding my approach to meditation, like what are the different,
it's not too bad. There's a lot of
theoretical understanding.
I might be able to glue this part as
20
well.
practices or more.
Maybe.
So if you guys are
not
interested
sure.
in that, you know, go ahead and check out the
might
guides.
Be easier if I just
how's it going?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Okay. I am good. A little hectic this morning, as I told you before coming here. But yeah, I woke up really early, had to get a bunch of stuff done, and then came back home just in the nick of time.
Cool.
Fridays, I'm telling you, Fridays are those days where everyone sort of does their thing, comes home and relaxes.
Let's do this one.
I'm one of those people where it's like Friday's the busiest day of my week to an extent.
Why do you think that is?
My work schedule is more geared towards the weekend. Like weekends are where I just sort of get all of my stuff done, and then I try to make a relaxing weekday for me, you know, as much as I can. That, and I'm really all over the place. So it's like when it comes to weekends, after I'm done my work, my off time is doing more busy stuff, is doing more like intricate stuff. So that's what comes down, you know. It's like there's really no moment where I'm like completely off, you know, like just relaxing on a weekend.
So
weekend. What is weekend?
Thanks for coming on.
What is the weekend?
And what do you go by?
We don't do weekend here.
My name is just Mudahar. It works. You know, I'm actually glad you're one of the few people that first messaged me, and it wasn't like, "Hi, Mr. Ordinary Gamers," because I get that a lot, and you know,
yeah,
it's never fun.
Give me just 1 second. I'm gonna try to just switch our server and see if that fixes it. So you go by Mudahar?
Yeah,
that's what I go by. First name.
Fix this.
Do you? Yeah. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just I was getting like a weird ping on here, but yeah, no, I know it's a pretty weird or unorthodox, first
It's
name and everything.
not too bad, actually.
How many people have it?
Yeah. So
Yeah, this part is really bad
Mutahar
here.
versus Mutahar. Do you know
Yeah,
which
this
one?
part. Let me fix
should
this a
go
bit.
with?
No, that is no Mutahar is fine. I never went with the second one. That's
Okay.
I go.
That
We did this a
may
bit.
be, I may
Relates
get
too
it
much.
wrong a couple of times. Muda.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Muda
Almost everyone gets it wrong.
Muda sounds very Texan, so I just got to channel my inner Texan.
Yeah. Oh, you're from Texas? Mm-hmm. That's some good stuff. I've been down there a few times, so I hope.
Wait,
to
what
go
is this?
again
Why is
when
that so
all the
long?
lockdowns take, the restrictions go down.
And how long have you been in Canada?
My
It's
whole life.
Blue. Oh, it's
I
locked
would
here.
say, I would
Okay,
say, like,
got
if
it.
we're talking about me moving here, probably when I was less than a year old. So I wasn't. I
Okay,
wasn't born up here in
feel like
Canada,
that's
but,
good.
I'm
I'm
pretty
gonna
much
fix this
born
one as well.
Canadian, if you will, right?
Might have to glue this
know.
part.
I'm surprised by
yeah.
how similar your accent sounds to people down here.
I thought about that too for a while when I lived in the States.
Maybe
a
I just
little bit.
fixed the
The
leg,
furthest I
but
ever
it's
lived
not.
in the States
It's
was
not that
Michigan.
visible
Everyone
at
told me
all,
that
so I
didn't
don't
sound
think
Canadian, and
I
was
need
like,
to
what
do
is
that.
What is the metric for sounding Canadian?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I
Yeah,
drove
hold
an
on.
hour up
Let
from
me
where
see
I
if I
live,
need
and
to
then I
do
was
that
like,
or
oh,
not.
that's what the real Canadian sounds like. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay, no, that's really off.
So you said you moved here. You moved to Canada when you were a year old. From where?
Yeah, India. It's,
Not too
what
bad.
part
I
of
had
India
judges
are your
already,
parents
so it's
from?
not too bad.
My whole family is
Might be here,
from
though.
Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. You got like half my family from Lucknow, and then you got half my family who like moved to Pakistan during the partition. So it's like it's just spread across the board,
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's
I
better
have
if I just
family
glue
back
it,
home,
but,
I would say like my side of the family,
Where
where
should I
I'm
glue
from,
it?
we're Indian.
Yeah. Got it. And was there something in particular that you wanted to talk about
Not
today,
that
Muda?
visible at all,
Honestly,
but
I mentioned this earlier. It's just the idea of the whole like lockdowns and isolation. It's just been insane.
let's
the
just do it. Why not?
From a Canadian, I think we've had the worst lockdowns. When I look at all my American friends, right, like they're able to go out for like months on end, and we've been locked down for like 6-7 months straight, like the hardest lockdowns. No stores open, no nothing. Everything has
my
been
God.
completely curbside. Yeah, meeting family has been the hardest because you know. When you go to meet family in Canada during the lockdown, you have to do what's known as car Tetris, I guess, where you have to like park your cars in like a block over so the police driving by doesn't like notice like more than 4 people are in a house meeting each other despite them being family. So it's been a complete like everyone is stuck home, and the entire government sort of pushed this.
This might
just
be a
talk over
bad
Zoom,
fucking
which
idea,
isn't
actually.
the healthiest thing, right? Like you can't just sit over and
not sure it's
Hold on a
good or
second.
not
If there
to
are 4
do this one.
cars in a parking lot, the police will.
Yeah, if they notice more than like 2 cars in a driveway, they have the idea that there's like a big gathering in the area, and then they just come in and fine you like crazy, and it's
Oh my God! So they're just like police, like patrolling your residential streets, looking for.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, there was a point I think 2 months ago where they gave like the Toronto,
Wait,
like,
this one
Greater
have the
Toronto area police
Zoom?
officers the right to just like pull your car over on the
didn't
drive,
know
like
have
out
this.
on the road, and they could pull you over and ask you what you were doing, and they could like fine you, I guess, if you didn't give the right answer. No cop ever enforced that. All the police chiefs said that was a bad idea. So that's
Wow.
where we were for a while in Canada, at least. All while they didn't stop all the international travel, so everyone from around the world just kept coming in, and we had to like stay in our houses, which. I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to like elaborate more on that. I'm sure there's a reason, but like it's just at some point it gets too hard to deal with. Like trying to
erase
meet
some
your family.
stuff
I haven't seen my
down
family. Well, now I've seen them, in the last several weeks. But there was a period where it was like, okay, let's talk over the phone. I guess let's FaceTime each other, and it was never the same because I took it very much for granted before the lockdown ever began. I was always like a solo guy. Like I was always living, on my own and having a good time. But we would always go meet each other over the weekends, right? Like, dinners, go out to eat. And then it's like for the last 6 months.
You shouldn't do
there was, like, a
anything.
period
Why
where
did
they
I turn
stopped
on
lockdown
the
for like 12 hours?
what is that
And
for
then they
this
just
one?
started
This is
it
not.
up again that same night. So we
This didn't do
we
shit.
had lockdowns over 6 months, I would say, and then it was just we were completely separated, hardcore in the province that I'm in.
What's that been like for you?
I would say the worst. I mean, like I said, it's
part kind of
something that
bad
I
as well.
definitely
It's so
took
weird.
for granted, hardcore, and I'll never take it again for granted after. Right, like the
It's
last time I can remember
bouncing. You see that?
going out for like a meal with friends was like August.
I
of
just flew this part
2019,
as
you know?
well.
Like
This
that's
area.
like 2019 is where like my last you know
Maybe.
brain kicks in. Like wow, that was when things were normal, and then I had a flight to
It's not
Texas, you know, 'cause we
necessary,
had PAX
but,
South with friends, and I went over there.
maybe
we had a
I
good time.
should.
The moment I flew back,
Maybe.
January 2020th is like when the whole lockdown started ramping up, and you know this. Whole,
Yeah,
like,
maybe in the
COVID-19
future, so I was just
broke down, and then
I'm hoping
in
just
home ever since. You know, work
the
from
hands
home,
being rigged.
do
Not the
nothing.
hand though.
Occasionally,
Not the
meeting
hand. I'm just
friends,
adjust
you know,
some stuff.
once in a
I'm
while, but-
actually
So
other than that,
when you say it's
almost
been rough,
finished.
like,
Need
in
like
what
2 or
way
3
has it
more
affected you?
days, kind of. I'm doing the
miss
second outfit
having
right now.
people next to
Right
me.
now, just
I miss having
adjusting some
people over,
stuff.
you know, even if it is just to talk, right?
Yeah,
Like,
this is the first
I
outfit,
have
and
very
this the
like,
second
I would
one,
say
which
minimal
I'm
social
doing
needs.
right
I don't
now.
need to go anywhere, you know what I mean? I don't need to like experience
jacket
the
as well.
world in that, you know, traditional
Yeah,
way.
just
like most people
adjusting
expect.
some stuff.
I like the concept of having friends over, even if it is just to watch a movie over there, or to have a
Yeah.
drink, or you know, play a video game or something, or have a barbecue over at my house. Like
Okay.
before the whole coronavirus, I used to see my godchild every once in a while, right? Like we went over there, we had a whole
Now it's a lot
family thing.
better.
It's been
This
over
part
a year
needs
since that's
a bit
happened, and he's already grown up to,
little
like,
adjustment,
you know,
but
this, like kids grow fast, so now
Yeah,
it's
I
just
know.
oh wow, it's been over a year. I mean,
let's
what am I
reduce
gonna
the
do?
weight a bit.
And that's where we're at, you know. It really sets into stone how important it is to have like an actual physical connection and like be there to other, because you can't do it over the internet. Like no matter what anyone says, you can't do, you know,
Yeah, it's
Zoom
a
calls.
bit
You
better
can't-
now.
even when it comes to work, right? Like when it came
We did
to
this off
my
a bit here.
job, we do
This-
like a
this
small
area.
business over here, so we're like a family, right? We see each
Maybe.
other in the office all the time. Now that we're home, you know, what the heck, right? Like it's all over the place, you know.
Yeah.
Even
I think it's
physical
better.
health wise, you know, whereas I used to
Might
go
do
out and do
the same things
activities
here
here
as
and there.
well.
Now because we're all locked in, you know, what are you gonna do, right? Like your time is all over the
Yeah,
place.
should I?
What do you do? How do you spend your
For me,
This one is
my-
separated a
I
bit,
have
which is
pretty
not ideal,
strict
yeah.
schedule now for work, right? Like I start work at like 8
This
o'clock.
part got separated
I end
a
it
lot.
by 3:30
I shouldn't
PM. Like, I
use
used
this
to,
type
a
of
year or two ago, like, I used to be
drawing here,
hardcore
this
into
this
that
style.
24-hour no
This makes
work-life
things
balance,
harder for
which
no reasons.
completely threw me out for a
Should
loop,
just
right?
make
It was
it
the worst thing
really
you can ever do with your health. So
basic,
now I have
kinda.
like this,
Right
you
now
know, I
it's
wake up
just,
early, finish, you know, sometime reasonably before the sun goes down, and then I go out for a walk. You know, I go out and you know, run here and there, or you know, just breathe some fresh air.
Yeah,
And by,
it's
like,
just
7
let's include this
o'clock,
as
why
well.
not?
Why not?
and Muda, can you just tell? Can we actually rewind a little bit? Can you tell me a little bit about what
Should do the
growing
mess
up in
better.
Canada was like?
Now that I think about it, I should do the mess better.
Growing up in Canada
think
is
I,
about, I guess, one could expect. Like, I mean, I had a normal childhood. I don't have like
kinda
wild stories, but I'll say as an Indian kid
There is
growing
not
up
an-
post
enough.
9/11, that's
Got it.
the one thing that I would remember the hardest. A lot of people make Canada
The mess
out
is
like it's
really
this
bad
crazy
here.
multicultural loving society, and that's true for
This is the thing
you
they
know,
need. So
95%
is
of
this
the
didn't
scenarios.
affect
But when you're
much
the
at
only
all, so
Indian
it's
kid
still
growing up
fine.
after, you know, what is one of the greatest North American tragedies, you know, there's going to be a lot of people who look at you, and in a way, that whole experience probably shaped me into the person that I am, because I've always said this on stream, right? Like when I went through that period of, you know,
Erase
being
some
bullied
part
for,
out
being
here.
isolated based on, you know, who I was, I could either absolutely, you know, let this ruin me, or I could just, you know, hunker down. I could realize, okay, I can take this adversity and I can, you know, channel it and I can turn it into a productive, you know, I can fight against it
Yeah,
in a productive
this
manner.
way
and
of
I feel like
drawing
that's
is
what
make
I've
this
done now,
hard
so
for no
it's,
reasons. I
How
don't
do
know.
you do that?
Work hard. You know, back as Indian kids,
I would
growing up,
take
you know,
notes
as
for the
Asian
future
kids, your
is
parents
rigging.
always tell you about how important it is.
Take more time
you
to
know,
do
be good at school. You know,
the
you always
the
gotta
mesh
get A+,
and stuff.
You always got to do this. You always got to do that.
Do it manually
And
instead.
growing up in
Save
Canada in that
times later.
environment, it's so much more important. It's so much
Yeah.
stronger to realize that the only way that you can
Some part
prove
like this.
your worth in society, right? And at least this is how I learned is you have to get into the system and you have to be the best of the best in the system, regardless of how much it is stacked against you, right? So I would say for an immigrant kid, literally an immigrant child, you know, it's probably 2 times harder than the average person you have to deal with over here, but it is doable regardless of how much you have to sacrifice in your life.
Already kind of good.
You know, high school is when I pretty much started working, and only now at 27 am I winding down my life. You know, like only now do I feel like I can breathe, right? So
fuck, I have to wait.
It's been a journey. Like
I might have to adjust it a bit as well.
You know,
It's look could look kind of off over here. See this light? Yeah, it's not a light. So
so let me just think for a second. So do you have siblings? You mind if I ask?
Off the outfit.
I have one brother. Yeah.
Okay. Older, younger?
Younger, 5 years younger than me. Yeah.
And did you get a sense of so you're like a full-time,
which is not
now,
ideal,
right?
I think.
It's a hobby sort of, but yeah, hobbyist at this point. But
so when you say you work from 8 to 3,
this shit
understand
off a lot
what
here.
you consider work?
Right here.
So 8 to 3:30 is when I start up my actual computer, because I have 2 separate computers, right? Like a work computer and then like a gaming computer, right? I keep it completely separate because when I have games installed on my work computer, it, you know, mine goes somewhere else. I'll play this match here and there. So I started my work computer. When it comes to my actual, you know, job, I work investing and, you know, at this point, right, like stock market stuff. So I gotta wake up early. I gotta like screen stuff, and I gotta like screen stocks, and I gotta like look at investments. So I'll buy and sell early in the morning, and I'm usually done by like noon if I'm, you know.
Oh, so I missed that. So you're like a day trader.
Yeah, I used to be, but now it's just, you know, at this point that was what I used to do for a while, and now things have become more relaxed. So it's just buying and selling, and that's pretty much what it is for me. So buying large commodities and putting them on the market, selling them, and things of that nature.
And so, what did you think you were gonna do in high school?
Oh man, I had no prospects coming out of high school. I was so in the middle of work and studying that around the time of 11th grade, because in high school they tell you is your 11th grade results and your 12th grade results is what matters to go to college. I was so busy at the time that I was like, man, what did I want to do? If I had any goal in my life,
I don't think I need to adjust it at all.
I would consider that have been my dream job for the longest time, is to work in law. But this is a point where money, going into law school is probably one of the after medical school, it might be the second most expensive form of schooling.
Maybe this side be harder. This is move a lot. So
that wasn't a reality for me at the time. After high school, it was just I actually applied to the Army, but you know that didn't go anywhere. Eventually, I just worked. I went to university for computer sciences, and that's it.
And so you said you were working in high school. What kind of work did you do in high school?
Just computer work early in. That's what I was doing. You know, your basic like part-time work, nothing, you know, substantial. I was also a student at the time, and in fact, a lot of my work really ended up being just like basic community service work, just to rack on the hours, because in Canada you have to do your minimal amount of community service to graduate, like 40 hours. But 40 hours is like the minimum. You need like way over 40 if you want to get into a good university, or at least even have an attempt. So I was always working for free, either that, making some part-time cash on the side, and that's pretty much, or you know, getting my studies done. Some night schooling, because we had to get more credits than I had, because I moved around a lot during high school in America and Canada.
Oh, do the second one.
Your credits don't carry over sometimes. So I had to take some extra classes to even be able to graduate and get into university.
Be part of it, not all of it.
Hectic 4 years of my life.
This area.
That, you know, flew by.
I think this way of glowing is better.
Is absolutely
like the way I do it in the past.
Fun thing, and you know what makes it
be
even
part
more
of it
fun
and
is
just
when you're not good at a lot of your subjects. Like I was
adjust
never good
it,
at English.
cut
I
the
didn't have a lot
part
of
that's
good
not necessary, and
classes I was in. The only
go from
class I
there.
was really
I think it's
good
better.
at was math. That's about it. That's my background, right? Like math is one of those things where it's like, okay, you give me a formula, I'll be able to, you know, extrapolate based on that. But I literally could not do. I wasn't really feeling all the other subjects. I was good at it. Like I could get good grades, but you're not feeling it, right?
Okay,
like, I don't want to go to this English class. Like, sure, I'll get your 90 and I'll call it a day, but it's not fun for me. It's not engaging me. The only class that I actually even ever enjoyed, aside from math, which I'm saying enjoyed because I
And I
like
just
numbers.
glue it with
to an extent.
this
Was
one.
a video production class. It was sort of like one of those electives you would have. You would just pick in. So I was like, I get to edit
Program on
videos on
thing.
Final
Yeah,
Cut.
it sounds like you worked really
It's only by
hard
the
in
thing
high
that is
school.
like possible, so
Taking night classes,
videos
doing
like this
community
is
service, like
right in
side
place
jobs
right
on the
away.
side,
So
like
okay, so do I have to
Yeah, no,
adjust anything?
it's blurred. I'll help you understand.
yeah. I mean, can you help me understand like what was in your mind? Like, if
It's
you're a
not
sophomore
bad.
in high school,
Not bad at all.
like
My mind was to, in
Yeah.
my head, I had this long-term goal of keeping
Glue
my
is
grade point
nice.
average above a certain point.
I need to
That's
use
my
glue more.
long-term goal. In sophomore year, super important because in my head, I always think like this, right? Like when they told me that 11th grade and 12th grade was the important grades where they would calculate, I'm like, there's no way you're ever going to be successful in those grades if you don't start that success from the 9th grade or the 10th grade era, right? Like if you're just slacking off for the first 2 years, that mentality rolls in to those last 2 years. So I was always working hard and maintaining
Okay,
my
let's glue
GPAs,
this
having my prerequisites,
area
all of
a
that stuff.
little
Even when we
bit.
were moving around, right? I was calculating, okay, I just lost these many credits. I got to have this much to graduate.
Just
I was
the
there was
thing
a point,
on
man, for
this
like
side, I
11th grade, I
feel
was just
like
focused on
needs to
can
be
I
glue.
graduate normally? Do I have to like victory lap based on how much I
Yeah,
moved
the
around?
outside parts.
You
So
know,
it
that's
wouldn't
what was running in my head,
separate
so.
when
And I remember like
doing
moving
things
around.
like
My dad,
this.
who is in the medical field, he moves around a lot because of it. I never ever told him that, yeah, this is really piling on to me, Dad, because I didn't want to like, be a burden on it. I didn't want to tell him to, screw your job over.
not
Because
that bad.
I'm telling you. So I just kind of rolled with it. I dealt with the punches because I'm telling you, high school felt like I was in the longest boxing match of my life and there was no breaks, right? Like it was just
That's what it
punch,
sounds like, man.
punch. It was punch, dude. Even summer breaks, we had
it's
those
not too
2-month
bad.
breaks, and for a lot of students, for a lot of guys, it's
But
like
I do
2
have to
months
glue
off?
the outfit number
Hold on,
2
it's
though.
getting a little. 2
Where the
months
fuck
off,
is it?
It feels like forever. For me, 2 months off felt like a weekend now.
Where the
you know?
f-
It's just like,
Wait,
oh,
where is
school's
it?
ended. Okay, I got some homework.
Hold
I
on,
got to focus on
outfit
what's happening
2.
going into this next grade. I got to make sure that I even had like a money like goal too, because I was like, I got to save enough
Okay.
cash in order to even think of going to college or
just these
university, right? So
wow.
yeah, like I would say growing up for me happened forcibly. A lot of people get to enjoy their life, like their younger age. They get to make their mistakes.
Might
I was
glue
on,
this
like, a
part a
tight
bit as
rope
well.
with no
in
safety
the
net.
top over
Imagine
here.
having the skinniest thread going across the Niagara Falls, and you have to cross the entire thing, and there's no safety net. So that's what my life kind of felt like for a while.
When did you realize? How old were you when you realized that you have no safety net?
Got this part.
Probably
The top only,
first year of
I feel
college.
like.
I'd say when I got into college, right? Because I thought when I got into university for a while, and I dropped out like a semester in because I was like, okay, no, I'm not doing. Because University of Toronto, like the first semester that you went in, you paid this crazy amount, and at this point, I started, getting more work on the side. I started building up a career, so I was like, wait a minute, do I choose to go through this university path, which will work for me, or to go on the career path? That's when I realized, like, okay, I'm on that tightrope, like I've got no safety net. Like I'm after high school. High school was that era where I could make my mistakes, right? Now I'm in college. Now I'm in the professional field. Now I'm like on my own. I have to make money to
Wait,
pay my
this-
mortgages or rent at the time. And that's when I realized, okay, now I can't make a single mistake. Now I'm stuck in. Now, whatever I choose to go, whatever choice I make now will affect my weeks going on forward. That's where my mind was, first year of college.
I find that a little bit hard to believe because I know it sounds kind of a weird thing to say, but like it sounds to me like you were sort of really maybe you had a safety net of sorts, but it sounds to me like even when you were a freshman or sophomore in high school, you were like, I got to start now. Like, it's I almost hear that mentality there, like even earlier than college, where like if you screw up in 10th grade, there's no way you can do what you need to in 11th grade or 12th grade.
No, I'll say that I had the mentality in high school like that then, because like I told you earlier, I was like, okay, I got to make sure my grades are good going in to get accepted into college. But when I got into
Steve,
college,
it
right, you
work
think
on
like
that.
for a second that you can breathe for a bit now that you're in college, you've gotten into the university you've wanted to, you're into the program, and it's still hard, right? Like it's not high school,
Okay,
advanced anymore.
I need to
it's you're professional to that point. And I think the reality of when I turned 18 and I became a full adult, and I didn't have my parents to depend on anymore. I had to, like, it felt like every choice decision that I was making was completely on me. And like college, that 18 to like 25 was that moment where like every decision I make will affect how my life is forward. I feel like that's where I realized, like, okay, high school, maybe I could have made a mess up or two, right? Maybe, but
it is adjusted a bit.
Not in my college or professional life.
You sound very, like the future was sort of like bearing down on you, like every single day. Like that's sort of what I'm feeling. It's like there's sort of this.
I still feel like that, man. I mean, even though like I'm 27 now and I think I've got my life together, I still think about what life is going to be like at 40 for me, right? And it's interesting because my dad one day sat me down, this is before the pandemic. He's like, because I told him this exact same conversation that we're having right now. It's deja vu for me. I told him about like, I got to prep for my life at 40. And my dad one time, he told me, he's like, do you even know if you're going to be alive at 40? Like my dad had this conversation. And it was a weird conversation. I was like, Dad, why would you think that, right? Like, and my dad's like, no, it's a legit question. Like, are you going to be, alive at 40? Like, how do you know that? How do you know? Why are you choosing to like live
actually
for
good.
life? And
I'm trying to move it a bit.
Why are you prepping for 40 when you're not even living now? And even though we had that conversation, it's hard to ever.
Oh yeah,
the
thing beneath is not
connected
yet.
I go to bed and I don't think.
It's
tomorrow,
fine,
responsibilities that I have, right? Like
I feel like
all of that.
Yeah, that's a little hard.
Compiles on you. I would absolutely love to have like a mental guide map. I feel like this is actually a really great question. For me, I look at life in the numbers and like what's there, like a good example, right? Like when I look at things tomorrow, right? I'm like, this is how much I need to pay for my bill tomorrow, my mortgage, every payment for the next 6-7 months, right? I look at it from a numbers perspective, right? Like this is what I need. But I never look at myself, right? I never realize what do I need to make sure mentally is what I'm prepared for the next day, right? Like how do I make sure that I'm mentally like sane 6 months from now, right? How do I make sure that I don't overwork myself to like, literal insanity? I would actually like to help there. Is there a problem?
Yes, there's a big problem. That's because your goal is actually reinforcing the problem. So it's subtle, but you're like, so like instead of thinking about dollars, like you've said, oh, Muda has like a bank account and he has like a mental bank account. Mm-hmm. And what I'm doing right now is I'm withdrawing money from my mental bank account to make sure my physical bank account is good. How do I ensure that my mental bank account is nice and full? You see what I'm saying? But it's still that mentality of like, how do I make sure that tomorrow is going to be okay?
Yeah.
And we could talk about isolation in the pandemic if you want to. It's really your. I feel like
it's more interesting to hit the root of my actual mental problem here.
Yeah, if you're game.
This is way beyond isolation. This is like my entire life.
Yep. So, that's what you okay diving in a little bit?
Yeah, I'm okay diving in.
Okay. If I ask you a question that makes you
I'll let you know if I want to answer. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Right. Okay. I was about to say makes you uncomfortable, but I think it's okay for me to ask you questions that make you uncomfortable, and you got to let me know if I step too far. Okay?
Okay.
Yes, so that's good enough. I'm going to start with,
so tell me what it's like to live one day in your head. If I was an observer in your head, what would I witness?
Okay, no.
You'd witness me waking up and immediately.
This is gonna need a lot of glue here.
All my emails, work
a lot of them.
What we have to do today for the next week, throughout the week. Doing all of that busy work in your head, making all your calls, making all your
glue this shit as well.
And then living
just
basically
the real part of it, baby.
As to handling in and making sure all of your work responsibilities are met day to day. I would say that if you were an observer looking in, you'd probably notice that for an hour in the morning, I get to breathe a little bit, and then for the rest of the day, it's like autopilot. Like work. I'm doing it, and then towards the end of the day, like 4:35 is when you get to see me again, right? Like I've entered my body again, seeing me be myself.
And what is it like when you enter your body again?
It's I guess it's like a feeling of just, I guess, well, for one, you know, you get to breathe again. You know, you get to be yourself. You get to focus on what your hobbies are. You get to focus on what you want to do for the rest of the day, right? Now you finally gotten your body back. So for me, it's like, hey, do I go out for a walk or
That's
do I
good
go home
thing
and I sit
it
and
need.
program something that I'm
maybe.
into? Because one of the things that I love to do after work is I love to, you know, sit around and program and tinker with, you know, a couple of computers that I have sitting around over here. So for me, the rest of the day is just basically what I love, you know, like what I actually want to do, not what I have to do to survive day by day, right? So for me, that's what it comes down to. And then that's pretty much what it is. Regardless of what my channel name is, Some Ordinary Gamers, I don't do a whole lot of gaming throughout the week, unfortunately, because of responsibilities anymore. But you know, that's the day of my life, an observer, if you will. I'm doing something every hour. There's never a point where I sit down and I really breathe, you know, like I have like my moments, but I'm always.
What happens when you sit down and try to breathe?
I honestly can't. Like everyone gives me advices on meditation, you know, like breathe for like 15 minutes, you know, do something. And I keep doing it, but like there's this feeling of anxiety. I would say like there's this feeling, a physical feeling. It's almost like, you know, when your throat is raspy, you know what I mean? Like it almost feels like it's just, you're throwing lava down your throat. Like you just don't feel good. It's kind of like a panic attack, if you will, because I feel like I have to be doing something. It could be anything. It could be something. It could literally be me, like, you know, spinning something in my hand, right? Like a fidget spinner or whatever, anything. But I don't know if I can sit down in a chair and just close my eyes and breathe nonstop for 15 minutes. Because in my head, I'm always like, wow, you could have done something productive. You could have done something. You've just sat down and literally did nothing, you know? You just sat down in your own head. My brain doesn't allow me to sort of think for a little bit, to be in my head, you know, because in my head, there's another voice that tells me, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to make sure this is done. You're wasting your time. You know, you have this responsibility for tomorrow. You got to make sure that it's set. Like I had a video project that I had to get done.
I miss
on
a
Friday
chunk
one
over
time.
here.
This was a month ago. I do a big video project on my channel every month. So I divide up the whole thing, you know, like I'll do an hour of it one day and then I'll do an hour of it the other day. So I've already divided it, you know, but even though that I've allocated 1 hour of my day to this project, when I sit down to breathe, I'm like, you could have applied this half an hour to this project and sort of gotten it done faster. You could have made the project better. So when I'm uploading this video in my head, I'm like, wow, it could be way better than what I did. I wasted, you know, free time. It'll always constantly run through your head. Like there's never a point where your brain will allow you to stop and think and be yourself. It's always, you can do something. You can be doing something. You're not doing anything. So I wouldn't say worthless feeling, but, you know,
should I
it's not healthy at the same time. I don't know how to exactly describe that. I don't know the term if it exists, but
how does it feel to share that?
It doesn't. Yeah, it feels weird. Like I keep a lot of this in my head, man.
Yep.
I don't think I have the courage to ever describe this to people.
Okay, disconnect over here, so I shouldn't touch that
and
part.
You ask me, hey, are you okay? I would most likely give you a lie. Like I would lie to your face and be like, I'm totally fine. You know, like I don't think I have the.
Why does it require courage to?
I just feel like I'm opening myself. I feel like I'm coming across as weak when I tell you, like, you know, I'm calling myself this worthless individual in my head. I don't want to like reiterate that same thing to you. I'll tell you.
Can I
turn
it off to see the effect of it?
When I came to my parents, right? It's like, are you okay? Like, are you doing? So I always tell them, yeah, absolutely.
It's
like,
still working.
Even
So
when we were moving around, and I could have told my dad, like, hey, moving around in high school would have been pretty bad. Like, it would have.
I can adjust the weight of it with
absolutely. So, you know, it's just this one lie you keep telling yourself, and you try to lie enough about that you end up
this one. I can keyform this one.
I feel weak in my head.
Okay.
Like, I don't have the courage to tell somebody that I feel weak in my head.
Got it.
I've always felt that those feelings are a lot easier to deal with if you can bottle it up and punch through the day, you know what I mean?
The PC is so hard. What never ends.
The boxing match that'll never end. Like some days it feels like
this part is really hard.
I guess it just it's like somebody's shooting me, you know what I mean? It's like I'm getting shot every day, right? Like it's like that feeling, right? Like that punch to your stomach, you know what I mean? And it's like
Let's do
You can tell
this part
somebody
as well.
that it hurts. You can tell somebody
Maybe you
that
should
it,
do the
you know,
thing beneath as well.
you can lean on somebody
without
or
the
you can
outfit.
just sort of deal with the fact that it happened to you and move
Like
on. You know,
this
if that
part,
makes any
because
sense, right? Like, you know,
the body
you've already had
movement
the impact.
and
So are you gonna waste time sticking
these
with it?
angles,
Or are you gonna
that
waste
is
time
make the
thinking to
thing
yourself what you could
unbelievable
have
over
changed,
here.
or will you just proceed to
So
go
I
on? Or will
should
you
glue
fight
it
on ahead, right?
somehow.
Yeah. Persevere.
You just copy this shit.
Yeah, perseverance, exactly. You know, the strong survive type
And
mentality.
paste
like,
it here.
There's no time for a break. Your brain won't let you sit quietly for 15 minutes
absolutely not.
because you have to persevere.
And if you don't, then your brain will tell you you're wasting time.
Here is on this
Do you
part.
feel weak sharing this right now?
Yeah,
I think we
actually, a bit.
should connect
To be honest
this
with you, I
per
feel,
se.
Yeah, I feel
Maybe.
I have spent my entire life bottling things up, you know, like if anything is genuinely hurting me mentally, I felt that it's easier if I can just bottle it up and push on. I've got, you know, younger siblings, I've got parents, you know, like the older they get, the more I got to take care of them. So it's like I got to be in that mentality. In some ways, I got to get used to being this stone, if you will, right? Like this Tanuki suit from Mario, which is like just perfectly still, like it just nothing can affect it.
Yeah, but
I know
the
if
tricky thing about the Tanuki suit is that you can't move anywhere.
Exactly
You stay stuck.
I mean, I know. Listen, in my head, I know at one point, like for a long time, that if I keep doing, it will be the death of me, like physically. If I choose to keep doing this concept of, if I choose to keep bottling myself up, I am eventually killing myself by doing it, you know? Because there's no way that I feel like mentally I'll be able to keep doing it for 10 more years. Like if I'm 35, 36 still bottling in things, that's going to be where my brain stops working. And
The
I don't
pen
want to
is.
feel like I'm one
Oh,
of
it's
your,
not.
you know, hard cases or something. Like,
Yeah, so I get the sense you're very anxiously looking at my face and trying to interpret how I'm sitting with what you're sharing. So let me just start talking, because I'm afraid that if I sit silently for a minute, your
did I
mind
use
is
the
gonna,
wrong one?
like, create all kinds of negative thoughts. Does
Oh,
that make sense?
it already is beginning. Don't
Yep.
worry
So
about
what is it? Share with me what your mind is.
I used the
telling you right now.
wrong one.
Well,
Oh no, I
in
used the
your
wrong
head,
one.
like, when you look around, it's like
Oh,
when your eyes
yeah.
open up a little bit, and you're,
Oh,
you know, it's
fuck.
like
Okay.
earlier, you're like,
Let's just
the fuck,
redo it.
right?
It's
like, you were just
fine.
like, what's going on with? I was like, man, in my
Just the
head for a
top
second, I'm
part.
like, I guess I'm too far gone. I guess I'm just one of those people that he's like, I thought this guy was, you know, I thought, you know, I could do some work with this guy. Now it's just, whew, you know, he's gone.
Buddha, I'm very confident that we can do work. I can feel very good about helping you with this.
Wait, is the sound still working?
But
Let me check.
I think it's tricky because no matter what I say, even if I say
Like
something like that, I
it's
would
gone up.
imagine that instead of being reassured, you would actually feel like maybe a little bit ashamed if I say something like that. Do you detect
You're
it?
actually,
Yeah, there's no sound at
you're
all.
right on the money there.
Right?
Because
So
now I just, yeah.
Fuck.
You hit it on the money.
Now what is it? Tell me. When I say
No,
no,
it's-
don't
when
worry,
you-
I can absolutely help you with this. And then what do you feel?
I don't know. I guess I feel like the positivity, like sort of the laugh for a second that you had. It almost, I would feel like it's kind of like a pitying in a way. You know what I mean? Like, oh, don't worry, we can deal with it. It's just,